転生
The Cursed Shinobi. A Tale in the Percy Jackson World, Part 3. Disclaimer. Don't own PJO or Naruto. And, this is a continuation of the Fearless series found in Olympian one-offs. Lunar Phases. The Cursed Knight, PT3. Alpha. The first letter of the alphabet. The brightest star of a constellation. The dominant personality in the room. However it's applied, it often refers to that which is considered to be at the top. In zoology, the alpha animal is the leader of the group, who makes the decisions for the survival of their followers. To be one takes a keen mind, a strong will, and a tempered body. Alphas must remain on guard, because when challengers step forward, often it comes down to a contest where the winner takes all. July 4, 2008. Large explosions of light filled the night sky, drowning out the chorus of howls that followed each burst. The celebration of the first American colonies declaring their independence from English rule was often one of fanfare and spectacle. In his earlier youth, after leaving the hunt, Naruto would take to the streets, keeping an eye out for and dealing with over-exuberant celebrators. Crimes of opportunity were more common during the holidays, when guards were down and minds were elsewhere. This year, Naruto found himself trying to keep a rowdy group of wild animals within the confines of his lodge. The parents were being difficult, too, but at least they had the decency to howl outside while they patrolled. Hey, how did you get OU? Give me that. Naruto gently scooped the teething baby wolf up in one arm and pried the first edition copy of White Fang out of its mouth. He glanced at his bedroom, eyes the stains on his bedding and the fuzz sprinkled around that was clearly the remains of his pillow. Blue eyes turned back to the 5-week-old wolf pup, who immediately made another lunge for the book in his other hand, but he pulled it out of the way and set it on the dresser. Charlie, no. No. Charlie barked at him, paused and then howled after another faint crackle hit the sky. Sage. Would you kill that thing before it makes us deaf already? The fox snarled. Get over yourself, fox. The teen mumbled as he carried the squirming pup out of his room and closed the door. He'd deal with the laundry later. Naruto turned Charlie around in his arms and stared into the pup's light blue eyes. You are a very crafty thing, Charlie. That will help you hunt later, but gods it's a headache right now. Charlie barked. Yeah. He sighed and set the wolf pup down, turned away from the door. Immediately, Charlie darted back to the room. Naruto blocked her path with his foot, feigning a snatch at her that earned him an adorable growl in return. Go relieve your stress on your siblings. Go on, Charlie. Go. With gentle prodding and firm rebuffs, Naruto eventually corralled Charlie back to the rest of her litter mates, locking her back behind the guard gate. He glanced at his kitchen table, where there would be babysitter sat with a couple of empty beer cans around him. His face was planted into a half-eaten hot dog. Jeremy, Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. Recomposed, he slapped the boy upside the head. Wake up. Ow woo. The drunk teen groaned and cradled his head. Don't hit me dude. Not cool. Hey, where'd my hot dog go? It's on your face. Naruto sighed, grabbing a can for himself and popping the tab. He propped himself on one of the island stools and took a sip. He entertained himself by watching the boy across from him struggle to wipe mustard, relish and ketchup off of his face. Jeremy Higginsworth, a New Yorker by birth, had been ripped away from the city life he was so comfortable in and dumped by his rich, yet terrible, parents in Colorado. His father was negotiating some kind of business deal on behalf of his client, and his mother, the woman he'd met was covered in volumes of thick makeup and consumed liters of wine, had a particular issue with all of the immigrants running around New York, was more interested in entertaining herself. Jeremy had gotten himself lost on his first day in the woods, and Naruto had led him back. A few more interactions with the boy followed his brief reunion with his friends from camp, and somehow this pompous dick had become Naruto's closest mortal confidant. It might be that he appears genuinely interested in your studies. The fox rumbled. Naruto hummed and sipped from his can of cheap alcohol, watching the boy tease the pups with his face meat. A clack of claws caught Naruto's ears, and his eye saw a flash of black before a yelp sounded. Naruto couldn't help himself, he laughed. Geez, Bruno. Make a sound. Jeremy shouted at the wolf that was happily finishing off his acquired treat. He rubbed his hand protectively and glared in Naruto's direction. Thanks for the heads up, Wolf Whisperer. and deprive Bruno of his fun. I'm not that cruel. Naruto smirked and patted the beta's side as he walked past to join the pups and their mother. He glanced out the window, seeing soft shadows move in the dark, and with them a glimmer of silver. Guess the rest of the patrol went well. Then that means Jeremy Higginsworth, wolf pup sitter extraordinaire, is due back at his penthouse suite. You passed out after 4 beers and Charlie snuck out again. He gave his friend an annoyed glower while the boy muttered a half-hearted apology. Naruto shook his head and finished off his drink. You can sleep off the rest of the alcohol in my bed tonight. While I'm flattered, dude, you're not my type. Besides, I can drive. I wasn't asking. Naruto gave the boy a firm stare, partially for the insinuation and partially to get his point across. He'd knock the fool out if he was drunk enough to protest. Luckily for his friend's dignity, the mortal relented with a grimace. Okay, Mom. Jeremy stood and stretched before grabbing the last unopened can from the table and making his way to the bedroom in question. Just don't wake up half-eaten tomorrow, yeah. Naruto snorted at the poor joke and gathered the discarded remains of the 6-pack he and Jeremy were supposed to split. His last round around the lodge to check on the other wolves was even rushed, and the jerk still drank over 2/3 of their limited alcohol. A series of thumps followed by a familiar yelp told Naruto his vengeance was had. Nate. Dude. Not funny. Jeremy cried out. I just laid face first in wolf piss. Yeah, that sounds like a you problem. Naruto called back as he tied off the garbage bag. Showers clean. Jeremy let out a mock laugh in response before stumbling his way to the bathroom. He would proceed to fall asleep seated on the toilet, mess on his face long forgotten. Alas, that was a discovery for tomorrow. Naruto snagged the half-eaten package of hot dogs from the counter. 2 went into the pup bowl, one landing beside the slumbering Aquila, and the other plopping in front of the alert Bruno. The pups immediately attacked the 2 processed meats. I'm gonna toss this. Keep an eye on the kids, bud. Naruto told the beta before taking his garbage haul and chucking the other 2 dogs at the rest of Aquila's pack. A fight ensued and he smirked. Have fun, guys. Not going to split the food fairly? The fox asked with a hint of snark. Life's not fair. Naruto grunted as he dropped the garbage bag off at the can marked with an Ada. A flame shot up and he slammed the lid back down on it, shaking his head. Sorry, Hephaestus. It was his mother's petty way of getting back at Hephaestus, dumping the very garbage that was destroying her domain into the smithing furnace where his domain's advancements started. Also, there was the whole thing where Hephaestus, prototype of Talos, tried to kill him and her hunter. That it resulted in one of the revelations that cost him his shot at being protected from other Olympians didn't endear the construct to her in the slightest. Naruto dusted his hands off and turned to the wood. He put his thumb and ring finger into his mouth, and mimicked a nighthawk's call. 2 more returned, followed by the sound of a wild turkey. He rolled his eyes. Just come out, Lieutenant. I haven't got all night. A silver-sheened, olive-skinned girl's head popped out of the bush. She wore a silver tiara around her head and a frown on her face. You're no fun, Naruto. And you're wasting my time. Naruto crossed his arms. Like I said, I haven't got all night. Why do I get all the attitude? Bianca huffed as she stepped out of the forest. Her arms crossed to match his. You weren't this bad with Zoe. 1. Zoe helped raise me. Mouthing off to her got me nowhere fast. And 2, he shrugged. I'm a little buzzed. Happy Independence Day. You, too, wait, really? Bianca blinked. He nodded and she tilted her head. Huh. Lady Artemis probably won't like hearing that. She'll get over it. Naruto rubbed his eyes. Bianca, not that I'm not happy to see you. I am, but please get to the point of this visit. So rude. Bianca huffed and crossed her arms when he glared at her. Lady Artemis wanted to let you know that the King of Arcadia has been restored. His numbers are small, but growing. Good to know. Naruto scratched his head. Not a hunter, so I don't understand why. He was last seen heading this way. He pursed his lips. The King of Arcadia, Lysoun. The first Lycan. The king that killed his son, then dared to feed Zeus his cooked flesh in an attempt to humble him, and, finally, ordering assassins to kill the king of Olympus in his sleep. One of these crimes was enough to call the wrath of Zeus upon you, but all 3. The moron all but sealed his fate the second he drew breath after admitting it. I take it back. That's a good reason. Thanks for the heads up, Bianca. Naruto nodded, already thinking of traps to set out and ways to protect his mother's wolves. I also came for a personal matter. Bianca mumbled. She fidgeted with her hands. You saw Percy and the others on their quest, right? Naruto nodded, his frown increasing. He even got a call the day before from Talia at 4 in the morning to confirm they were safe and tell him what happened. Afterwards, Naruto immediately reached out to his uncle and expressed his condolences for the loss of his children. Lee Fletcher sounded like a guy who might have passed for an all-right Kusan, and the numerous others fell in fire. The irony was cruel. She hesitated. Was Nico with them? Your brother? He asked. She nodded and he shook his head. No. Last I heard he'd stayed in Texas on a ranch where Uncle Fred's cattle are. Oh. Bianca frowned. Thanks for telling me. Is there something wrong? No, just. She rubbed her arm and looked away. The last time we spoke it didn't go well. Are you that surprised? Naruto blurted out before he could stop himself. The look she gave him was shock mixed with hurt. Part of him felt bad, but Bianca made her decision to be a hunter of her own free will. All decisions have consequences. He sighed and led her over to a long dead fire pit, gesturing at a seat and sitting across from her once she took it. From what I understand of your life prior to being recruited, you were all he had, Bianca. Naruto interlaced his hands between his legs as he held her gaze. You left him to find your own life. It's worked out for you, hasn't it? I mean, yeah. Bianca admitted with a nod. I'm somebody now, not just Nico's sister, or one of the D'Angelo kids. She sat a little straighter and held her head up high. I'm Bianca, the lieutenant of Artemis Hunters. That you are. Naruto cracked a small smile. And you're doing a great job. Thanks. Bianca smiled back. It fell and she looked down. But when I tried to explain that to Nico, he got so angry. He's allowed to feel angry. You left him, Bianca. You left your little brother alone in a camp he's never been to with people he didn't know after you were both targeted by a manticore. Naruto pointed out firmly to the hunter. She shrank into herself and stared at her feet. He sighed. Bianca, I'm not saying this to be mean. You made a decision that didn't just affect your life. This is a consequence of that decision. Honestly, if I were you I'd be more worried if he wasn't angry. Really, what's the worst he could do? Raise a legion of the dead to storm Olympus. Bianca muttered. Wah, right, child of Hades. Man, alcohol was a killer on the memory. It was a rhetorical question. Naruto rolled his eyes before rubbing his face. My point is, Nico has to come to terms with his anger by himself. If anyone goes up to him and tells him how to feel or how not to feel, it'll only make him feel even more angry. So, I have to wait for him to reach out again. Bianca frowned when he nodded. They sat in contemplative silence before she looked at him. How do you know all of this? Naruto was quiet for a good moment. He reflected on the day his uncle took him back from one of his field trips to a small apartment rather than the hunt. The anger, the hurt, everything he felt all built up. He found release in cleaning up his territory. Finally, he shrugged. I've gone through it myself. September 17, 2008. Did you see this? Talia almost choked on her burger when a newspaper was slapped down in front of her. Annabeth, who'd spent the night before helping her study for her driver's exam on Sunday, stared at her with wide eyes, hands still on the paper. Talia looked at the front page of the Gazette, swallowed the bite of burger in her mouth, and arched an eyebrow at the headline. I mean, good for Ellen. I really don't see how news that old is a big deal, Annie. What? Annabeth looked down at the paper with an image of the famous talk show host's marriage to another woman before rolling her eyes. No, not that. This. Talia followed her finger to the story regulated to the upper corner. Fourth hiker 18 found mauled on trail of Pikes Peak, Colorado. Identity unconfirmed. Man-eater at large. Continued on D8. Talia looked up at Annabeth. Okay, so there's a man-eating bear in Colorado. This is noteworthy because. Talia. Annabeth pinched the bridge of her nose. Naruto lives there. What if he's in danger? Annabeth, be realistic. It's Whiskers. Talia frowned. This was getting concerning. The girl had been acting paranoid about her friend's safety since after the attack most campers were calling the Battle of the Labyrinth. The split between Mr. D and the Cloven Council was widespread news now, and dryads were muttering things that were borderline treasonous. Campers were nervous, and everyone was on edge after the summer came to a close. Talia, he's immortal. If the mafia didn't kill him, I doubt a bear could. Talia understood her concern, but now wasn't the time to worry about something happening halfway on the other side of the country. Besides, he was raised for the first part of his life by the goddess of the hunt. If he couldn't kill a bear, what kind of hunter would he be? Talia, Annabeth looked at her lone cell phone when it rang in her pocket. Oh come, with a groan, she answered the call. Dad, I need a minute. I know the expo opens in 2 hours, but, yes, I still want to go. Can I? I just need 30 seconds. Really? Thank you, Dad. I'll be right down. She hung up and pointed at Talia, gray eyes steeled. Read the article. Homework. Talia. Okay. I'll read the article. Go, before Frederick comes to get you and bothers me. Talia grunted and went back to her interrupted lunch. Mr. Chase had too many questions about Zeus' preferred tactics in battle and policy. He definitely didn't understand that she didn't know the answers not out of ignorance, but because she didn't sit at the king's dinner table every night. His skepticism over her relationship, or lack thereof, with her father was so hypocritical it was infuriating. Annabeth gave her another worried look before running out of the apartment to catch her ride. Her dad was taking her back to an exposition of some architect nerd gathering downtown. She'd be back at around 7 or 8 tonight to help Talia cram more knowledge into her brain before her test tomorrow. With burger in hand, Talia flipped through the paper until she found the page indicated. She might as well get it out of the way so she wasn't caught off guard about it later. After managing through the story, cursing her dyslexia every time she had to reread a passage, she snorted and took another bite of her burger. Witness testimonies were already being printed, and references to other, strange, sightings filled most of the article. Stupidest part about it. The biggest running theory for what killed those poor kids was a werewolf. Yeah, she knew the story about Lysound, but he was long gone. Slain by the Huntress Way at the start of her first year back from tree life at Zeus' demand. As for what happened to the poor hikers that bit the dust, a wolf had probably gotten them. Sucks for them, but Artemis was practically divine to wolves. Whiskers even told her that he lived with her pack, alone. He was fine. But what if he's not? A soft voice whispered. It sounded like a smaller, more scared version of herself that absolutely never existed. What if he needs help? He's fine. Talia rebuffed the concern. She took another bite of her White Castle burger. He's probably studying or something. Ooh, maybe he's on a study date. Talia groaned and set her burger down. She rubbed her temples. Just once. She practically whimpered. Just once I'd like to eat a burger without you butting in. Then stop thinking about the hunk when you're nomming on tough meat. Aphrodite huffed. Honestly, given the circumstances, I'd expect you to be thinking about holding those firm buns in your hands. Could you not? Talia felt her face blaze. She'd never thought anything of the sort, well, not until now anyway. Thanks, Aphrodite. What? Some mortal food is amazing, but White Castle's instant burgers never get cooked right. Always too hard or soggy. Thinking about the texture makes my skin crawl. The goddess huffed before gasping. Oh, wait. Did you think I meant? Shut it. Talia hissed as the goddess tittered. Oh, my darling Talia Grace, you never cease to impress me. Aphrodite's smile was prominent through her voice alone. Look, dear, if you really don't care about Artemis baby boy, that's fine. It'd be more fun for me to corrupt him myself, anyway. I hate you. Talia scowled and pulled out the phone that her mysterious benefactor George had delivered to her cabin shortly after the Battle of the Labyrinth. Before making the call, she tried to finish her burger. Tried being the operative word, because now her thoughts would drift to other things. Particularly the texture of the bread around the meat, and the terminology's other application. Groaning at the waste of food, she tossed it and finished speed dialing the one number she had saved. It rang 3 times before it clicked. I'm not available. Leave a message. I'll call back. Whiskers, voice curtly cut through the receiver, followed by the beep signaling to leave a message. Talia frowned. She looked at the clock. It was noon here, that meant it was 10 there, and he didn't have classes on Saturdays. Brunch date. Aphrodite suggested. Does everything relate to a date of some kind for you? Talia asked irritably, ending the call and trying again. Voicemail. Again, same result. Talia could feel her blood boil as traitorous thoughts started to sink into her head. Just to break the rest of the rule of 3, she tried once more. No dice. Definitely a date. The goddess sounded so smug about it, too. Talia closed her eyes and held her phone to her forehead. Or his phone's dead. That was fine. Ish. Why wouldn't he charge his phone? Whiskers was a lost cause with technology. He got incapacitated by a high-velocity ding-dong from a snack machine once. Why did she think he could use a phone? Aside from the fact that every other time she'd called he answered before the third ring. Oh no, what if he's dead? Aphrodite gasped. She immediately backpedaled. No, wait. I'd know if that were the case, because the poop sniffer would be snappish and poor Apollo would be so gloomy again. He's fine. He'll get back to me when he can. Don't listen to her. Ooh, but what if he was hurt? His phone is dead and no one can get a hold of him, or vice versa. He's fine. She's just trying to mess with you. Talia muttered to herself. She set her phone on the table and started looking through her freezer for something else to cook. With the aid of the microwave. She really needed to learn how to actually cook. Did Whiskers know how to cook? Why hadn't he called back yet? Talia shook her head. He'll call you back. He's fine. Don't let her get in your head. Or, what if he's ignoring you? Aphrodite gasped outrageously. Talia let out a sharp breath, mind stalling at the thought. Without an immediate retort, the goddess continued needling. That sly little mortal might be flirting with a barista right as we speak. Just ignore her, Talia. She's trying to mess with you. Talia grumbled, glaring at her phone as if it were at fault for the delay. She drummed her fingers on her arm. When had she crossed those? When had she stopped looking in the freezer? Why was Whiskers taking so long to call her back? If only there was a way we could know for sure. The goddess hummed pensively. A way to get a message out to him without using mortal methods. I am not wasting a drachma to make an iris message to Whiskers. Talia grumbled to herself. The urge to go turn the shower on was rising. She rubbed her temples. No, she just needed to distract herself. Food. She needed food. She needed to learn how to cook. Did Whiskers know how to cook? Why hadn't he gotten back to her? He'll call back when he can. Just ignore her. Oh, don't worry, dear. You can use my tab. Fine. Fine. You want me to go call him so bad, I will. Talia threw her arms up before storming down to her bathroom. The only reason she was doing this was because Aphrodite had pestered her into it, she told herself. It didn't help that her paranoid thoughts were driving her up a wall. Non. I don't care if you do or don't, but the drama if you do will just make it all the sweeter. Aphrodite teased. I hate my life. Talia mumbled as she drew the black shower curtain. She let the hot water run and crossed her arms. Once the steam started billowing, she spoke. O Iris, goddess of rainbows, I seek thine aid. Please insert 1 drachma. Iris, it's Aphrodite. You've got 1 Talia Grace on hold for payment pending. Bill it to my tab, would you? Aphrodite's smile radiated through her words as the IM's golden hue took shape in the mist. Thanks, dear. Go on, Talia. Alright, maybe there's some use to having you in my head. Talia muttered. She cleared her throat. Whiskers. A chime rang out. Individual not found. Oh, come on, seriously. Talia scowled. She didn't like using his actual name, not unless she had to get a point across. It felt wrong. With a huff, the daughter of Zeus crossed her arms. Naruto, son of Artemis. The golden mist shimmered into a cacophony of colors before heavy metal drums and a wailing guitar blared into Talia's bathroom. Faintly, she recognized it as a song from that new metal band that was rising in the charts, Five Finger Death Punch. She was momentarily stunned by the volume, before feeling heat race to her face as the image focused. Whiskers was definitely ignoring her calls, but not out of malicious intent. He was deafened to anything outside of the blaring music. His legs were bent at the knees and crossed at the ankles. White running shoes were on his feet and black running shorts hung low at his waist. Most distracting was that his bare back was to the call. She watched as his shoulders, biceps and triceps constricted, bringing the back of his neck up to the pull-up bar he was using. The worst part of it all, his skin was coated in a light sheen that she was certain Iris had nothing to do with. My word. A fan unfolded and began waving furiously on Aphrodite's end. Look at those dimples flex. Whiskers. Talia shouted, struggling to focus, but her voice was lost to the crescendo of the way of the fist. She didn't know the human back could be so lean and still so. Wait, was that? You got another tattoo. Of course, that shout was heard as the music had faded out with the end of the track. Whiskers dropped to his feet and turned to face her and, oh gods, the last time Talia checked, sweat wasn't supposed to be sexy. Tree girl. Hi. Whiskers' voice snapped her out of her dumbstruck gape. He turned the volume down on the radio set on a chair nearby and patted his face off with a towel before setting it back down. Everything all right? Tattoo. Back. No, damn it. Brain, come on. Just work. It's only whiskers. She shook her head, fighting back the blush and haze. Back tattoo, new. Why? Why was this her life? Whiskers tilted his head before his eyes flickered with recognition. He turned partially and, he's got his serratus anteriors defined to that degree. What is Eros doing? Why is he still single? Oh great. Aphrodite's comments were now both unhelpful and distracting, lifted his left arm slightly to look at the ink etched into his lower shoulder. Right. Got this a few weeks back. Friend paid for it after we spent a night, in town. Talia tore her eyes away from the serrated ant, the severed anta, the little ridges on the side of his chest and looked at the tattoo. It looked as if the hilt of a knife not unlike the ones he used was protruding from his back, the name, Luke, etched on some unraveled portion of the grip, and blood dripped from the fresh entry wound. She looked back at his eyes as he faced her again. Luke. It's to remind me that he was my friend once. Whiskers shrugged. Figured it was fitting. Talia couldn't argue with that logic. Maybe she should get one, too. You plan on getting more? Not for a while. Whiskers chuckled, rubbing his left shoulder with his right hand, and wow, did that pose do things for her. This one still kind of hurts. So what's up? Talia blinked. You Iris messaged me. He arched his pierced brow and crossed his arms again. Something up. Lately, you've only called. Oh. Right. Well. Quick, think of something really clever. Hello. Gods, why was her brain stalling? Oh, right. Stupid sexy whiskers. Hoover damn her hormones. If only she'd not listened to Afro. Wait, that's it. Hey, Talia thought. Since this whole thing is your fault. You got any more bright ideas? Too many, but I don't know if he's flexible enough for what I would do to him. I'd have to start him off on page 13 and work my way up. What? Talia blinked and then immediately blushed. Thoughts not of her own making suddenly filled her head with pictures. She shook her head and pinched her nose. No. Not cool. So not cool. Talia. You okay? Fine. Just fine. Talia quickly assured him, rubbing her face and doing her best not to let her eyes wander. Stupid hormones. I've got a migraine, that's all. No, don't sound like you care, Whiskers. Gah, and stop crossing your arms like that. So if you didn't want to talk about your migraine, why did you IM me? Because you weren't answering your phone. Talia hated how small she sounded at the end of that. Despised it with a passion. Seriously. Whiskers pinched the bridge of his nose. Why not just wait for me to call back? I don't know, okay. Annie was all freaked out by the hikers that those wolves are eating. Werewolves. The werewolves are eat. I'm sorry, what? They're werewolves. Not wolves. No, they're just wolves. Right. If it was actually werewolves, she was going to kill someone. Probably, Percy. He'd deserve it for one reason or another. Likely some smart-mouthed comment he'd make. Talia, didn't anyone? No, of course not, you guys are the ones fighting on the front lines. We're the support. Whiskers sighed and rubbed his temples. He shook his head. Okay, long story short, King Lysound is back and yes, I know he's killing hikers around me. He's building his pack with the missing hikers turning into strong-bodied and weak-minded werewolves. What? Alarm rushed through her. Annabeth was right to be worried. Frick on a stick. Lysound was back. Hey. Don't worry, the hunt and I are dealing with it. We're all okay. So, was that it? Talia bit her lip before she begrudgingly nodded. Whiskers gave her a lopsided, wry half smile that absolutely did not make her stomach flip. Okay. Well, I'm not done with my workout yet and I've got to be somewhere in an hour. Next time, if I don't answer, just leave a message. I don't want you to do this again, and catch me in the shower or something. What? Images raced through Talia's mind and her face darn near immolated. Aphrodite's gleeful giggles did not help in the slightest. Stay safe, tree girl. He cut his hand over his throat. Iris, cut it. Whiskers, if you hang up on me, Iris, no. Talia scowled at her shower as the missed call dissipated just as he turned the volume of his radio back up. She grit her teeth and angrily shut off the shower before storming out of the bathroom. She grabbed her phone and dialed Whiskers' number. Immediately, her call was sent to voicemail, no rings provided. Her scowl darkened. That stupid, lousy, son of a. Oh, even if I agree with you, don't say that. Aphrodite warned. She's so unbelievably petty, she might turn you into a bear or something. Your hunk doesn't seem like the type that'd be into furries. Talia almost launched her cell out the window as she let out a raging scream of frustrated female fury. She settled on destroying her toaster. It knows what it did. October 9, 2008. The prey walked amongst his fellow mortals completely unaware. Its flesh would fuel his pack for a month at best, but the feeding would be divine. He salivated just imagining it. Ian's he'd fantasized of emerging victorious over the huntress, of proving himself her better. He was thwarted too many times by the huntress, by her hunters, and even by that damned brother of hers. Now, however, his time was here. Mother Earth told him such. She told him that Artemis had follied. That she'd strayed from her oath. The prey was of her flesh. An aberrant, a mistake, covered up by the gods, hypocrisies. Who would have thought, the lying liars who lied once more. He was the king of wolves. He was a slayer of kin and the bane of the hunt. He was the alpha male, the apex of the apex. He was the ultimate predator, and he'd found his ultimate prey. A hunter that wasn't under Artemis' protection. An archer who didn't have one of Apollo's gifted bows. A half-blood who Olympus had sent away. It was his perfect prey, nay. It was the prey. The only prey that ever mattered. He stalked it and watched it for months. It worked with Artemis' pets, the beasts that so ruthlessly refused him as master, and the wolves that had fallen under their magical sway. Easily dispatched, he just had to be wary of their silver. The prey mingled with immortal and mortal alike, but neither stayed long. It was foolish and arrogant. Feigning fearlessness with thick bravado whenever he tested the waters. The lands it lived on were too well known. It had the advantage. A strategy was needed. When prey was cunning, it needed a baited trap. He needed to draw the prey to his neck of the woods. So he did. He snatched the mortal the prey appeared fond of. A miserable brat who reminded him of the very son he flayed and fed to the foolish Zeus. Please, please let me go, the mortal, henceforth known as Bait, whimpered behind him. Rude. He was busy conducting his memoirs. I told you to be quiet. Emissive red eyes fell upon the sobbing Bait. The king rose from his seat and stalked over to Bait. His claws almost dug into Bait's soft flesh, but he controlled himself. A tight grip latched onto Bait's jaw. You will lure it to me, Bait. It will die at my hands. If you wish to survive, silence. I don't even know who you are. Bait sobbed. Fury. Unimaginable, unadulterated fury swelled in him. Red eyes narrowed. Then mayhaps, I learn you. Wah. No. No, stay back. Stay back. Please. He gave Bait his blessing, and took a chunk of its neck for himself in turn. Ugh. Mom. Mommy. Please. It burns. It be you who hurns. The king swallowed his treat with a gulp and licked his chops. A bit stale, very salty, but rather tender. A stick broke in the distance, and the king grinned. So begins the hunt. Lycanthrope. The myth. The legend. The horror icon. Half man, half wolf. It takes but a scratch to spread its miserable condition. A bite is more damning than deadly. According to Apollo, the acclaimed motion picture An American Werewolf in London is the only absolutely accurate depiction of lycanthropy today. October 9, 2008. Jeremy was taken. Of the mortals in the city, of the many picks Lysound had, Jeremy was the one taken next. Taken right out from his territory. They'd spent the day planning his 18th birthday party, rather, Naruto arguing he wasn't celebrating his birthday while Jeremy insisted he needed to throw a party. You have all this space out here, dude. You can't let it go to waste. Jeremy threw his arm over Naruto's shoulders. Look, give me a day. I can get a band out here and at least 50 people to party with. Beer, babes and boobs. You get a pass for the pun. Naruto huffed, knowing that his friend was not talking about female breasts with the last word, but of mindless other males that would fill the hypothetical party. Come on, what do you say? No. Dude. Jeremy whined at him. At least go into town and eat a cake or something with me. If it'll make you shut up. It will. Half swearsies. Relenting only to spare himself more of his friend's whining, Naruto had walked into the lodge to get his keys. Barking, whines and tearing steel preceded the scream. He raced out and pulled his cuff from his ear, his axe appearing in a flourish. 2 werewolves were disintegrating on the lawn. Aquila and 2 others were bleeding out nearby. Jeremy was nowhere to be seen. The tires on his jeep were slashed, and the hood had a message carved in it. Hunt. Aquila and her kin were burned. Bruno was the alpha now. He was left to protect the vulnerable pack. The mortal gathered his supplies in record time, and set out without a word into the night. He's baited the trap. The fox hissed as Naruto raced through the woods. Unless you are willing to do what must be done, do not spring it. Shut up, fox. Boy, don't you disregard me. Shut up, fox. Fine. Go get yourself killed for all I care. Merciful silence. Blue eyes followed every broken twig, every shifted pebble. The tracks were too obvious, the trail too plain. This wasn't a wolf pack's raid on an encroaching enemy pack. This was a trap. The trail ended outside an abandoned logging facility. The main building was a wooded structure. There were cobwebs in the cracked windows and subtle groans that suggested imminent collapse. What is this, some kind of cliché horror movie? Naruto grumbled. He furrowed his brow in thought. Lysaon was a Greek king and Greeks were known for their dramatics. Resigned to embracing the cliché, he sighed and prepared a throwing knife along with his axe. As he stepped into the logging shack, the air seemed to go still and turn stale. The floorboard creaked beneath his foot and shadows shifted. Silver knives flew into the darkness, and pained whines followed their wet impacts. Lysaon. Naruto called as he walked further into the mill. I know you're here. Let the mortal go. A deep, rancid chuckle echoed through the structure. Shadows glared at Naruto, and he glared back. He strained his senses, seeking any sign of his friend or his foe. Let the mortal go. A dark sneer repeated. More chuckles ensued. Creaking along the rafters had Naruto go still and peer up into their shadows. So predictable. Next you'll say, it's me you want. You're $% profit. Naruto sneered back. What's wrong, your majesty? Are you so afraid of me that you had to take a meat shield? A heavy weight landed behind him and Naruto turned, axe swinging. His axe-wielding hand was caught at the wrist. The culprit was a lean man with skin straining across him like a tight suit. He was clad in robes of animal carcasses, none of the kills fresh or cleaned in the slightest. The grotesque man bared yellow, crooked sharp teeth and glared down into his eyes with emissive red sockets. I fear no mortal, child. Lysaon snarled. Naruto narrowed his eyes and drew another knife with his free hand. He attempted to impale the king with one go, but Lysaon released his wrist and leapt away. Yeah? Naruto asked, shaking out his wrist and brandishing his axe. The faint light glimmered along its edge. Blue eyes narrowed to slits. I'm going to make sure that changes tonight. You will try, but the full moon is upon us, pray. Lysaon slunk into the shadows with another laugh. His voice echoed through the mill again. My time has come to rule once more. Behold, my latest servant. A creaking groan of opening doors made Naruto whirl around. What he saw gave him pause. Jeremy, sans a large strip of flesh from his right eye to his clavicle, was shuddering in a chair, kept bound by barbed wire. His right eye dangled from the socket, a milky unfocused orb held by red thread, and the left eye was bloodshot as if he'd been crying. Blood stained the space around his mouth. Jeremy. Naruto took a cautious step forward. Nate, I thought we were friends. The left eye focused on him. It watered and tears fell. You saved my life, dude. You could have told me. I wouldn't have said anything. No. Naruto frowned. Jeremy's left eye closed and he nodded curtly. The blonde lowered his axe, but the knuckles wrapped around it turned white. You're his now. Jeremy nodded again and let out a sob. I'm sorry, Jeremy. And he truly was. He'd left his guard down and Jeremy suffered for it. He was dragged into a world he never knew existed, and likely would die because of it. Be damned for something out of his control. It hurt so much. The boy indicated the wound on his face. Then he looked at his hands, bound by the same wire around his chest. Like lightning rushing through your veins. Except the pain doesn't stop after he bites you. It hurts forever. It's rushing through my body. And I'm so hungry. So hungry. Huningari. The soft clip of wire snapping made Naruto tense. Jeremy jerked forward, ripping himself free from his confines. Flesh tore away like wrapping paper scraps with a grotesque howl and a massive dark wolf lunged at him. The lone mortal turned to the side, his wrist and shoulder rolled, and a thick wet sh-lek sounded. The wolf's head bounced along the floor at his feet, fur falling to reveal the human face beneath, before it, and the body it was once attached to, reverted to dust. A glamorous kill, boy. Lysaon jeered from his hiding place. Red eyes started glowing in the darkness, the snarls and growls of bloodthirsty werewolves filled the air. The king of wolves chuckled again. But that was just one member of my new pack. Can you beat them all? Naruto didn't react. He stared down at the space where Jeremy's head had been. His grip tightened on his axe. Along his left arm, skull inched ever nearer to Saul, had he closed in on Mani. The black stud in his left ear started to glow a deep, blood-hued red. Boy. The fox rumbled. What are you doing? You're not supposed to. Uh-oh. Naruto's eyes snapped open at the shift of dust and creak of wood. He pounced on the beasts that tried to overwhelm him, countering their trap. His axe fell into the skull of one wolf. Another fell victim to his knives. The pattern continued, man's flesh and cloth tore from the teeth and claws of the wolves. Silver pierced monster hide, and in an hour's time, the last wolf's golden dust rained down upon him. Lysound. Naruto roared, right hand gripped tight on the hilt of his axe, left holding a silver blade that yearned for something to be buried in. His call was met with silence. The mortal's blood boiled. The king had fled. Red eyes narrowed. He reared his head back and let out a primal yell that echoed across the world. If it was a hunt Lysound wanted, it was a hunt he would get. Preparation was necessary. A man dressed like a mandarin of the Qing dynasty was walking along the Appalachian Trail. His form was illuminated by the light of the full moon, but no shadow was cast. Bats shrieked in the night as a faint roar echoed over the low din of distant thunder, and the hiker lifted their head. A pale face, near white as the light that fell on it, looked up. Red pinwheels spun in their eyes. Stupid Yankee went to town, riding on the Kyubi. Got himself into a fight, lost more of his own history. The figure mumbled before chuckling. He resumed his walk, pulling a slip of marked paper out and pushing it into his mouth before continuing. Stupid Yankee, give it up. Whatever you do, don't die now. Just find a comfy spot and don't move, I will come and put you down. Kansu sighed as he settled into his moonlit throne. He had a bowl of dates on his lap and was just about to enjoy the classic release of Universal's Mummy Marathon. He was pretty sure that the mortal realm was in the midst of October, their spooky month, and he thought the series, though vastly inaccurate, was positively frightening, well, more so that the acting in it was. Boris Karloff's silly makeup. Scary. Ha. Helen Grosvenor's performance in the second act. Now that was horrific. Kansu. Kansu pursed his lips and looked at the rippling mirror to his right. What in Ra's name could that boy want now? He'd been so kind as to not bother him for his rash decision to traverse into the forbidden space between spaces. He should leave him be and bother one of the other gods he knew. Kansu. I know you can hear me. Yes, I heard you, my boy, just hold on a moment. Oh, my, that's a frightening glare. The god chuckled good-naturedly when his chosen avatar came into focus and playfully shivered at the red eyes his avatar bore. Is someone regressing in their anger management? No jokes. Naruto glared at the god. I need a big favor. Name your price. A big favor, you say? Kansu sat back in his throne, smiling. He loved when his avatars made such foolish demands of him. They were so amusing. Nevertheless, he was a fair god. Most of the time. Well, I guess it depends on the favor. I need you to keep the moon full until I kill a specific monster. My. Kansu chuckled to himself and covered his mouth. He was already imagining the possibilities of what he could cash this request in on. Still, he needed time to consider the offers. That is a big favor. Why not just ask mommy dearest? Because I don't want the moon to fall until either it's dead, or I am. Are you asking me to pause time for you until one monster dies? Kansu blinked. He could do that, certainly, but curiosity had the best of him. He leaned his head on one hand. I'm afraid that I'm going to need more to go on here. It killed my friend. His avatar spat, teeth bared. Shame, that. Kansu feigned sympathy. He wasn't close to mortals for this very reason. They were amusing things and he was fond of a few of them, but their deaths were inevitable. He settled on his throne, thinking about any favors he was owed by the gods of the dead. He might earn good favor from his avatar if he recalled the lost one that elected such a response. That Talia girl, yes. You have my apologies, Naruto, she was a pretty. Not her. Not her. What in Ra's name did he mean not her? What other friends did this boy have? Elaborate. A mortal. Like me, only, no godly ties. He was normal. He was also kind of stupid, but very loyal. I'm sorry, are we describing a human or a dog? If this was over a canine, the conversation would end here. Kansu tolerated dogs at best. They were, like mortals, adorable from afar. Honestly, he was more of a bird person. I will obliterate your name. Naruto snarled, his eyes flaring bright red. That was quite the response. Kansu's eyebrow arched as the boy pinched his nose and scrunched his eyes shut. Sorry. I'm feeling guilty and pissed off and all of the werewolves dollar and asterisk percent everywhere before I got here. Why am I still in this building? I wasn't asking you, Fox. Kansu ignored his avatar's weak sanity. Most mortals had their quirks, so what was one more? But what was it he said? Werewolves. But he wanted time tied to one being. Surely, he didn't mean, even Artemis would not be so foolish as to let that mockery of a king, that utter failure of a host run amok near her son unprotected. No, wait. Focus. The werewolves were the issue here. Despite himself, Kansu's hands balled into fists. He rose from his throne, knocking his dates to the floor. Did you say werewolves? Yes. Werewolves. Yes. Werewolves. Naruto reiterated, his scowl deepening. Specifically, Lysoun. Kansu stood corrected. Apparently, Artemis was that stupid. She was letting her mortal son fight the king of werewolves. Alone. What was wrong with the Greco-Roman pantheon? Did they ever try to consider the quality of their avatars over the quantity? Just once. His power swelled. He would not make the same mistake. This investment is far too important. He would not lose another prime avatar by the fault of the Greco-Roman pantheon. This he swore by his Ren. Naruto, I want you to listen to me. Listen carefully. Kansu put his hands on either side of his mirror, silver eyes gleaming with barely restrained power. If you die in this pursuit, I will bring you back as a conscious husk of your former self. You will be cursed to wander the night and hunt the very family you care so dearly about. Do you understand me? Are you going to help me or not? Kansu grinned a furious, excited, twisted, mad grin. His power radiated from his hands and he engulfed the mortal world itself. Tying time to something as fragile as one insignificant life barely needed any serious thought. Tying it to an insignificant monster or his avatar, child's play. Doing both and cutting out interference from other pantheons would take all of his focus. He would likely miss the marathon he was well prepared for. It would be so worth it. Yes, my dear boy. He breathed out one last chuckle. And I'm even going to do it free of charge. Lysoun would die at his avatar's hand. The travelers of the night would be spared the hungry wolf's terrorizing ways. Kansu would be able to rub it into the other deities' faces, into Artemis and Diana's smug faces, that his avatar bested their so dreaded king of wolves. Everything in this deal, as far as Kansu was concerned, was a win. Naruto, explain this. Artemis glared daggers at the shaky image Iris was showing her courtesy of a small waterfall at the edge of the Rockies. The very instant she felt interference form between her son's tracking piercing, if only to ensure it didn't fall off, and her power, she attempted to go to his side. A barrier of Egyptian make stopped her. That interfering, insufferable, inept waste of a moon deity was doing something to bar her entry to Colorado. Colorado. Her territory. Her wolves were kept there, her lands were kept there, and, most importantly, her son was kept there. It's personal. The boy in question told her. His voice was disrupted by mystical energy and the projection's image kept breaking up. Iris, power was barely breaching the barrier. Person. If this barrier is not lowered in 3 seconds, you are going to learn what the term personal means. Artemis snapped. She could feel her head start to throb and closed her eyes. She willed back the Roman that wanted to spring forth and take the hunt to the Dwat. Artemis was no war deity, but even she knew that starting another war before they'd ever ended the first was ill-advised. With another deep breath, Artemis opened her eyes back up. Naruto, so help me, if you don't get this barrier down. I love you, Mom. Naruto smiled at her. A sweet gesture, one of her favorite sights to be sure, but it was not enough to get himself out of the trouble he was in. Oh, as soon as she found a way through this blasted barrier, her son shrugged. Just wanted to say it in case this doesn't work. Tell Bianca she's doing a good job, okay. A trap. Kansu made a trap. Naruto was bait. Artemis, head throbbed. She grabbed her skull and dropped to a knee. No. Not again. Do you think I want this? What are you waiting for? Our son needs us. I know. I can breach the Dwat. You cannot. We cannot risk igniting a second war. So we let our son do this. Obviously not, we just need to get through the barrier. I know a way, now let me handle it. No. My lady. What? Artemis Diana shouted, rounding on their lieutenant. Bianca took a half step back, but held her reserve. She pointed at the Iris message. Or rather where it was. Diana snapped. Diana no. No. Not again. Artemis felt the pressure in her head build up. And up. And up. She fell to her knees, fighting Diana back. It hurt so much, fighting back her own rebelling power, but she refused to be rendered useless. 3 months, she lost 3 months of action at Diana's will. Artemis vowed that she wouldn't be silenced by the Roman ever again. Especially not while her son was in danger. As the pressure became too much, Artemis pulled on her domains. Reached for the devotion of her followers. Called upon the gravitational might of her chariot. Heat erupted behind her and her twins' arms wound around her, pinning her arms in place. Hunters, unless you wanna be Ash, beat it. Now. Her brother's barked order was swiftly obeyed, for even her staunchest of distrustful hunters knew that Apollo would never attempt to physically or directly hurt her. She'd scold him for his crass method of saving her hunters later. Her head was tucked under his chin, and she felt her twin hum. A soothing, simple melody, nothing poppy or loud, brash or annoying. Like a warm, gentle sunlight that poked through the trees. The migraine dwindled to a headache, until eventually it was gone. Artemis tapped Apollo's arm, and cautiously he released her. Artemis. Apollo. Moonlit eyes looked up into orbs of blinding sunlight. Divine forms. You really didn't want her to come out, Artemis. He sighed. They went back to their mortal forms. What happened? That. Artemis turned to the barrier and scowled. Their divine forms hardly left a scratch on it. Egyptian magic was ridiculously broken. What the oh, come on. Did the Egyptian do this? Apollo asked with a scowl. Artemis nodded, just as unhappy, arguably, more so, with the development as her twin. He stood up and faced it. He put his hands on the barrier, grit his teeth, and with all of his godly might, Apollo pushed. The ground beneath his feet cracked, but the barrier didn't so much as budge. Artemis watched him stare at the magic for a minute before he took a deep breath of upper air. She'd had a fraction of a second to cover her ears. The frequency and pitch which her twin screamed at would shatter the soul of any lesser being if they could hear it. Immortals would likely react to it as if they're equivalent to a cochlea being damaged. It should have done something to the barrier. The damn thing remained unscathed. Apollo. Apollo, enough. Artemis, wincing as she unveiled one ear to the devastating sonic attack, clasped her hand over her twin's mouth and cut his scream short. He scowled at her behind it before glaring at the Egyptian construct. He stepped away and crossed his arms. I'm going to see how far this thing goes. Blue eyes glared at her. When it finally comes down, Lil Nephew is so grounded. I'm not talking, isolated in a cabin playing Wolf Papa, grounded, either. I'm talking about monthly check-ins, restricted visits, patrols, and maybe even a permanent sitter. This has to stop, sis. Do you think I do not know this? Artemis snapped. She pointed at the barrier. My son is in there, Apollo. My son. He is in there fighting against one of the most feared monsters to roam the planet. Her finger turned on him and her eyes narrowed. And that is your fault. Originally, the horrific werewolves of early man were merely a breed of shape-shifting monsters who discovered that they could disguise themselves as humans to evade Artemis and her hunters, save for the nights where her chariot's light was at its peak. In the early 19th century, those intellectual beasts that barely registered as a challenge were suddenly replaced by the now self-proclaimed King of Wolves, and his ever-growing and frustratingly resilient pack. Apollo's fascination with Gothic literature, my edgelord phase, he claimed, revived the punished and long-dead King Lysaon to his current state, granting him and his ilk near invulnerability to all materials save for silver. As the time passed, man's fascination with themselves surpassed the egos of their forebears, a feat Artemis thought impossible. They named and legitimized a disease after the monstrous king. This, coupled with the popularity of those infuriatingly sexist Universal films and others derived from it, ensured that Lysaon would keep returning from where he belonged in Tartarus. Quote. Okay, yeah. That's on me. That's my bad. Apollo rubbed his neck. Artemis scoffed at the understatement, but let her accusing finger fall. He sighed before dropping his arm and looking at her with a frown. The king is not happy that the mortals are seeing this. If he finds out Lil Nephew's at the center of it all. He will not. Artemis frowned. If need be, she would utilize one of her 2 remaining wishes to protect her son from her father's often irrational sense of punishment. Apollo shrugged and looked up at the clouds, likely where his car was. Just saying, sis. This needs to be figured out before it's figured out for us. It will. Artemis mumbled as her twin returned to his car. She began to pace along the state line like a waiting tiger. The minute weakness revealed itself, she would be in there. Kansu, you had better hope he lives through this. She thought, eyes thrumming with power. Because if he doesn't, the Titan's forces will become a secondary problem in my eye. So, it's come to that, has it? Frere stared at the barrier surrounding Colorado from atop Mount Rushmore. He rubbed his chin and eyed the Valkyries circling around it. The Norse god of fertility and the seasons settled down in his fold-out chair atop Washington's head. The first president of the United States was the only mortal he'd met before Naruto who he had known would instill a great change in the world. Frere pulled a bottle of mead from his cooler and, with a flick of his thumb, sent the cork flying across state lines. It bounced off of the barrier and he huffed. Well, that's annoying. Frere had put only a small fraction of his power into the cork's flight, just enough to ensure the spores on it would spread and fertilize some flora in the area. That the Egyptian's barrier rebuffed his divine domain was frustrating, and should have been impossible. He glanced at the source of power that appeared beside him. Enhancing other pantheons, magic now, Borson. The wolves, conflict must remain in the pack. Outside interference will lead to a disruption and dissolution, spreading the beasts to the wild and leaving chaos upon the lands in their wake. Odin rumbled. He sat in a chair that appeared beside Freyr's, and willed a bottle of mead into his hand. The All-Father took a swig and sighed. If it means helping one of those sand-crawling parasites then so be it. You wish to see the fox's power? Freyr accused. Odin cracked a wry smirk. No. That's a mystery I've already witnessed with his time as a lifeguard. The trickster's role is already filled by Laufeyson. A cunning warhound is needed to act as Tyr's right hand, to aid him in his triumph after I fall. The All-Father of the Aesir tribe settled in his seat. I simply wish to see what my son will do with my own eye. October 10, 2008. Yeah, Percy. We're watching. Annabeth mumbled into the wireless landline Talia had in her apartment. The two girls were sitting in the elder's apartment, eyes glued to the local news to catch sign of anything the Titan army might be doing. The footage of the mystery barrier around Colorado definitely struck her as odd, but too obvious for Kronos forces to utilize. She glanced over at Talia, who had her knees pulled up to her chin, arms wrapped around them. Do you have any idea? No, Percy, I don't know what's going on. Annabeth sighed. She rubbed her head. And before you ask, yes, I want to know. And I know that the mist will make people forget about it, but that doesn't change the fact I want to know. Were you always this nosy about weird things or is that new? He chuckled to himself. Clearly, he was referencing their first meeting at camp a few years ago. Annabeth wasn't amused. Look, Seaweed Brain, I'll call you back when this is over and we can compare notes. Okay. Okay. He was smiling that dumb smile of his on the other side of the phone line, she just knew it. Annabeth did her best not to smile outright at his next question. You still up to go see that Max Payne movie tomorrow? As long as nothing else comes up. Like, for instance, a certain red-headed girl that she didn't want to talk about. Bye, Percy. Say bye, Talia. Bye, Kelphead. Talia mumbled half-heartedly at the phone that was held out to her. Her eyes remained on the talking heads trying to discern the cause of the shadowed dome over Colorado. Oh, gee thanks, porcupine face. I feel so loved. Percy's sass huffed back through the receiver before he ended the call on his end. Annabeth dropped the phone on the cushion and looked at Talia. You don't think. I already tried calling him. And, voicemail. Oh. Annabeth frowned as she caught sight of a small electrical charge dance between Talia's fingers. Well, we could I am him. He'll call me back. Talia, he'll call me back. Annabeth sighed and let the grumbling girl be. Where she'd gotten such a disdain for Iris, messaging in the last few months, she hadn't a clue. Something told her it had to do with Aphrodite. Gray eyes turned to the screen, and focused on the bright silver ankh that reflected upon the dome. She looked back at Talia. Do you think he's okay? Talia's fingers dug into her arms, her lip curled in a snarl and her eyes briefly sparked. He'd better be. The prey was angry. That meant the prey would make mistakes. The first mistake it made was contacting that pathetic Egyptian in the open. A joke of a god, that one. Stuck in another plane entirely, thinking himself worthy of worship for his titles. The prey was a fool, trapping itself with his pack at the whim of the Egyptian. The king of wolves bowed to no god. He served only Mother Earth. That the prey sundered power to any lesser deity, proved its coming demise. Lysoun licked his chops once more at the thought of consuming his most treasured kill's partially divine flesh. It was making his stomach rumble. Peckish by the self-torment he willingly suffered and with so much fear permeating the land, the king of Arcadia made his decision. A quick snack would suffice, but it mustn't fully satiate his appetite. Not to mention, if done right, the attack on the nearby settlement would build up his numbers and bring about more power from the fear of Mother Earth's trusted dogs of war. With me. Lysound directed his meek pack towards a small visitor's lodge. He still couldn't believe that such a grandiose settlement had an utterly unimaginative name. No matter, they had a herd in desperate need of culling. Hours later, his pack had tripled in size and all were satiated by the meals they'd had. Lysound cleaned spare meat from his teeth with a child's ribbon. A faint primal scream emerged from the woods, scattering the fowl from their nightly perches, and he grinned. It was a weak excuse for a challenge, but Lysound would answer it all the same. The prey was ready to die. Finally. Come. The king commanded his forces. A mile across the wood and one of his wolves were caught by surprise when the ground collapsed beneath it. Lysound investigated the pit trap, ignoring the pleas for aid from the foolish mutt. Wooden pikes, sharpened by a silver blade, were set in the pit. The wolf wouldn't die quickly from such wounds, but it would be a slow, agonizing death all the same. No matter, the king thought to himself. The prey got lucky and culled his pack of embarrassment. He sniffed in dismissal and left the werewolf to its inevitable demise. The rest of his pack followed him as he went further into the woods. Another trap, a necktie snare, caught another wolf. It died and dusted before Lysound could investigate, finding only a silver cord noose that he dared not touch. The king of wolves scowled. Once was chance. Resorting to traps, he sneered. The silence of the forest said volumes. Lycaon's red eyes narrowed. These cowardly tactics will not best me, boy. Vines snapped. Wind rushed. Something heavy fell towards him from the right, and Lysound skirted from its path. Whines and yells rang out as a massive oak held by a series of interwoven vines swung down from the tree tops. The barreled werewolves it struck were caught in the air by silver-tipped arrowheads that flew from all directions. That simple maneuver reduced the size of his pack by half. Given that he was barely managing 12 mongrels before the last few were felled, it was a significant loss. The prey's soft chuckle echoed around him, and Lysound swiveled where he stood, silently scowling at the sound. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? The big bad wolf. The big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Ha, ha ha ha, ha, ha. Lysound snarled at the light-hearted singing that rang through the night. The prey dared to mock him. He, the king of wolves. The predator of predators. Face me, hero. Lysound sneered into the shadows. Do you not wish to honor your mother personally? To avenge your fallen friend? Of course, I do. The prey called from his left at another oak. Lysound sent 2 wolves in its direction. They had only just made it to flank the tree when silver-tipped pikes shot up from the dirt, killing the damned beasts instantly. He growled when the prey spoke again from his right. But you don't seem to appreciate how big a deal this is. Jeremy was my friend. That reason alone is why his death was quick. A sharp whine behind him had him turn in time to catch sight of the last member of his pack dissolving from a silver hunting knife to the head. He glimpsed a white cloth dart around an elm out of the corner of his eye. Furious, he pursued it. He was the predator, he would not be humiliated by this prey. Lysound juked mid-run, swiveling on the ball of his foot to see a set of iron teeth rise out in a snap. Ursine traps. A fresh click beneath his foot had him leap back, pressing his spine against a pine. Another, larger, silver bear trap snapped shut where he'd stood. Red eyes blazed. You will not trap me like some common beast, boy. Lysound roared, shedding his human form and tattered rags of clothing. His powerful frame was the size of a small mortal vehicle. What did they call them? Ah yes, a sedan. His unfiltered sense of smell was immediately overwhelmed by the tempting scent of mortal blood. His eyes, head and body looked up to the very tree he'd braced himself against to see the prey seated on the branch. It sat there, eyes locked on him, muscles tensed and ready to move. A hunter's cloak was pulled up over its head, a white scarf around its neck nearly hid its whiskered face, a shirt that brandished a shimmering crescent moon, pants that resembled birch trees and boots that were a bright white. A pair of fresh, deep cuts spanned the length of both his forearms, creating red lines among the tanned flesh below the pulled-up sleeves. The artery was hit, but the prey lived still. How? What? Was he scratched by a member of the pack? No, he'd sense the prey among his kin if it would have joined him by now. Then how? How? Lysound, you just don't seem to get it. The prey brandished its wounds and, right before the king of wolves' eyes, they sealed shut as if never opened to begin with. The prey's sleeves were pulled down, a white canvas capturing the form of a man, and in the shadow of its hood, its eyes flashed red. You're not the hunter anymore. An oppressive, thick aura radiated from it and Lysound found himself frozen. Instincts that only flared in the presence of gods were screaming at him. But this was not godly power. It was also definitely not the weak magics of mortals. It was ancient and it was angry. It was horrific. It was beautiful. Lysound hated it. Lysound desired it. The werewolf's own natures were at war with itself. Now begins the hunt. So run, prey, the prey hunter growled. Blades of silver filled its hands. It crossed its arms over its chest, and it threw the silver at him. Run. Despite his higher intellect telling his body to avoid, and stand the ground, Lysound ran at the order from the silver. As he ran, a sharp mechanical whine pierced the air and he cringed without stopping his instinctual flight. Then, that blasted song, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf, started to play. The pitch of the singers was higher, almost childlike. The inference that even children shouldn't fear him made the monstrous king's non-existent blood boil. Stop mocking me. Lysound roared. He leapt at the next loud source of the song and ripped a speaker from where it had been hung in the tree. Then another and another. Each speaker fell until the song stopped. But you make it so easy. The prey hunter's voice echoed around him. Or, do you not like that classic? Maybe we should go for something a little more accurate. Lysound snarled and shook his head. The hunter started to sing softly again. Round and round the hunter's camp, the hunter chased the werewolf, the hunter had too much fun. Lysound saw a flash of white at his right before something flew into his side. He howled in agony as the swinging kick knocked him into a tree. The blow cracked his ribs. Lysound rounded on his foe with hatred burning in his eyes. The hunter matched his gaze with intensity and color, but a smirk not unlike that of Artemis' own was on his face, rather than the scowl that the king would have if he were not in wolf form. Pop! Went the werewolf. I will tear your limbs apart, Lysound snarled. His claws dug into the earth's crust, his tail whipped like an angry serpent, and his muscles tensed in preparation to leap. I will skin you alive. I will rip your flesh from your bones. And once all that has been done, I will grind what remains into dust. Rather than be intimidated by the pain Lysound wholly intended to deliver upon him, the young hunter merely snorted. Bring it. He held his hand out towards the king, and a faint whistle was the only warning Lysound got before his danger senses went into overdrive. He barely managed to leap out of the way, and the werewolf roared as his right shoulder's flesh was sliced off by the same axe he'd avoided being hit by earlier. The axe, coated in his blood, shifted form before it found purchase in the hunter's hand. The blade grew to a thick silver crescent edge, protruding from one side of the now longer shaft, while a small pike rested on the other. Wolves' heads were engraved in blood red on the silver metal, and bled into vein-like gaps along the pole. It was everything a woodcutter would be expected to wield. Yeah, you're right. The hunter mumbled, as it examined the weapon it held in its two hands, before the red eyes looked up to meet Lycon's. The hunter's features turned stony and cold. Lysound, I'm going to enjoy watching you die. With an outraged roar, Lysound snapped and charged forward. Hey, batter batter batter. Su Wing, batter. The fox jeered as Naruto hefted the silver fireman's axe over his shoulder like a Major League Baseball player. I'm never letting you watch Ferris Bueller again. Naruto murmured as he took a swing at the leaping monster. He whiffed, only landing another graze on the wolf's hide. Lysound growled at him upon landing and he sneered back. Yeah, I'm right here, Fido. Come and get me. The next snarling leap was too close for him to counter. He used his axe's long shaft to catch the attempted bite. It wasn't entirely made of silver, and the weight of Lysound knocked him from his feet, but the yardstick-length mostly wooden hilt kept the werewolf's jaws at bay. Pinned under the large beast, burning the hinge of its jaw with the material it was so weak against, all he could do for the time being was hold it off and get lathered in the Mad King's spittle. That is absolutely disgusting. The fox deadpanned. Silently, Naruto agreed. He dug his feet into Lycon's underbelly and, with a great yell, pushed. The ton of muscled monster flew off of him and he rolled over to one knee, using his axe to steady him. It had been 18 hours since Jeremy died. It took Naruto the better part of 6 hours to clear out the rest of the mine. Lysound and his pack ate no less than 30 natives of Colorado Springs that had been trapped in the Bear Creek Visitor Center when Kansu's spell took over. Naruto had to struggle not to focus on their deaths, so that he could prepare traps for the werewolves. But now, his eyes fell on the king of kinslayers and his blood boiled. He turned your friend into a monster. The fox rumbled. He killed and ate children in front of their mothers. It was egging him on, to use more of its power. To give it a better sense of the world around it. To weaken its shackles to his soul. Naruto allowed it. A hot surge of what he could only describe as pure, unadulterated rage flooded through his body. I will rip open your carcass and eat your heart, boy. Lysound snarled before leaping at him again. Took the words right out of my mouth. Naruto ended with a roar as he stood, spun and swung in one fluid motion. The axe dug into flesh and stuck, caught on bone of the rib cage. The blonde scowled as his axe was torn from his hands. And $. Lysound bit into the handle and tore it from its side, throwing the weapon away as the silver handle burned its mouth. Naruto reached out to recall it, and the axe's trajectory turned, but his misplaced attention cost him. It would have been over in a bite, if not for the audible snarl that gave him warning of the Arcadian's next attack. His fingers splayed in the werewolf's jaws, one hand on the beast's snout and the other holding the mandible open. His feet dug trenches in the forest floor as Lysound pushed him back, trying in vain to snap his jaws shut on his prey. And I thought your morning breath was bad. The fox snorted. Not helping. Naruto growled. He cursed as his defense faltered, courtesy of a small stump that cost him his balance, and his right palm was split open on the werewolf's fangs. His hand remained his own and he hoisted himself with his good hand onto Lycon's back. What trickery is this? Your flesh tastes of mortal dirt. Lysound roared in outrage whilst trying to buck his would-be rider. Alf, you are so forgiven. Naruto shouted aloud, clinging for dear life onto the werewolf's back with his legs like he was back at the rodeo. With his free hand he tore the scarf from his neck, ripped off a strip of it, and held the rest in his teeth as he bandaged the gash on his palm. Once that was done, he lashed the rest of the scarf through Lycon's mouth to use as makeshift reins. He pulled on the scarf and jerked Lycon's head back, guiding the werewolf towards a cliff. Hi-ho, Silver. I will defecate upon your grave. Crimson eyes blazed into his eyes. Naruto shrugged. I expected nothing less from an animal. In Lycon's fury, he bucked his hindquarters forward just as his forepaws lost earth to tread upon. The werewolf flipped over the cliff and dislodged the teen riding him. Naruto twisted in the air, catching himself with a silver throwing knife that dug into the earth. Lysound fell with a howl into more forest below. A muted thump signaled the end of his descent. Think he's dead. Blue eyes narrowed. Not until I see his body turn to dust. Agreed. The fox rumbled. Well, go get him, bucko. Your words. Naruto huffed, planting his feet on the cliff's face and launching himself off. He spun, grabbed the hem of his cloak, and used it as a makeshift parachute to slow his fall, until it got snagged on the tip of an oak tree not 3 seconds later. He released the cloak, unclamped the latch, and crashed through branches, before he landed face first with a loud thump on the forest floor below. Ow. Naruto groaned, and pushed himself up from his unintentional face plant. He gingerly touched his face, and recoiled with a hiss when his finger grazed his nose. Broken. Don't worry, I'm on it. The fox's words were followed by a loud crunch. Naruto felt his eyes water and drove a fist into the dirt. He snorted out the rapidly dried blood. Ow. Look alive, boy. Something's not right. The fox rumbled. Naruto blinked the pained tears away and found himself once more agreeing with his unwelcome tenant. The wood was still. Dark. Worst of all, quiet. Not a single bird chirped nor was there a chitter from a critter. The only light available was from Kansu's full moon above them. Malicious intent, 6 o'clock. Naruto turned just in time for a mass of muscle to barrel into his gut. The blow launched him across the clearing into a pine that he bounced off of, and cracked something on impact. This time, when he fell, he caught himself on his hands and knees. Twinned with the stabbing pain in his back, metallic bile rushed up his throat and he coughed, the ground soiled once more with his blood. He wiped the back of his hand across his mouth and looked at his attacker. It stood with a man's posture and bore the same pink skin, but the features were misshapen. The legs were digitigrade with canid features and a small tuft of a tail protruded from their bare backside. Patches of fur kept it decent, and the wounds from his axe's silver blade had yet to heal. The head was the biggest difference of all, looking like the skull of a wolf with man's flesh barely pulled over it. You're one ugly Sonova bitch, aren't ya? Naruto sneered. A rabid roar of primal rage was the response. A golden brow arched. You still in there, king of throw rugs? Lai Sound was on him before he could so much as blink. Hands larger than a man's with claws sharp enough to cut steel were around his throat, slowly crushing his windpipe. Naruto gagged, his legs flailed as he was hoisted from the ground and slammed back first into the tree. Its hands tightened and his hands shot up to grab the monster's wrists. You die. Now. Guttural, broken speech ripped out of the snarling werewolf's mouth. It leaned in, its breath smelled of rancid decay and other foul things, and growled. My prey always dies. Lai Sound is king of hunters. Yeah, Naruto croaked, the edge of his vision going dark and his skin felt like it was on fire. His left hand released Lycaon's wrist and he held it out towards the king's already wounded right shoulder. The burning feeling increased, he bared his teeth through a choked snarl. Dare you to say it again? My prey always dies. Lai Sound reiterated. His lips curled up, exposing the muscles in his upper jaw, and teeth riddled with disease. His grip tightened and Naruto felt his eyes roll up. Lai Sound is king of hunt. Schlunk. RRRRAAAWWGHH. Naruto caught his axe and dropped to his knees, landing across from the now left-handed monster's formerly attached right arm. Lai Sound whirled on the ball of his foot and dropped to a knee, his stumpy arm clutched in his other hand as he let out high-pitched whine-like snarls. While he was turned away, the blonde struggled to catch his breath and almost dropped his axe. His head pounded and his body felt like it was immolating from the inside out. I'm working on it. The fox growled, a faint snarl echoing his words. Enough playing with your food. Finish this, boy. Or I will. Fine. Naruto grit out. He tightened his grip on his axe and used it to push himself to his feet. He braced himself against the tree, before he took hold of his axe in both hands. Steam rose up from his right hand's exposed skin's grip on the silver handle. Lai Sound. Despite the pain, Naruto hefted his axe high over his head. Your reign. As Lai Sound turned to face him, he brought the axe down. The axe's blade drove into the werewolf's skull and slowly sank through the remaining flesh. Is over. Naruto put his foot on the partially bisected beast's chest and pried the weapon free. He let his axe fall to the forest floor and glared at the dissolving corpse. His chest heaved as his palm blistered, but he didn't dare look away from the wily king. Once the monster's dust danced away on the wind, he craned his head back. The dark sky started to lighten, but the full moon remained in view. Blue eyes narrowed, his teeth bared, and his hands balled into fists. A primal scream of victory erupted from his lips, devolving into a cry of anguish that sent a tremor through the air. Once it ended, he dropped to his knees, hunched forward, and drove his fists into the ground. A pained howl tore from his mouth as bubbling red energy ripped his skin apart. Aconitum. A simple, beautiful flower capable of becoming the most deadly of poisons. It goes by many names, monkshood, devil's helmet, queen of poisons, blue rocket, aconite, but it's famous for one name alone. Mortals think it a fictional allusion to its deadly capabilities, but, as with many things, they gravely misunderstand its potential. Few things outside of divine weaponry can harm monsters, even less can kill them. The Aconitum variegatum is one of them. Its use in stopping a spree of kills by Lai Sound and his kin was kept silent by Zeus' decree, for fear mortals would take the plant and abuse its power. One god was not satisfied with this outcome, and ensured the flower's potential was known to all by giving it life through fiction in a name that all mortals recognize, Wolf's Bane. October 10, 2008. Something was terribly wrong. The very instant she felt the barrier's magic diminish, Artemis broke through it. She moved like never before, sprinting leagues faster than she'd ever known she could. Her eyes scoured the woodland for a sign of life, mostly for the one life that mattered. Naruto. Her call echoed through the air. Naruto. Lil sis. Artemis looked up and her twin pointed down from his chariot at something 3 kilometers to her northwest. She turned on a pinhead and flew through the woods. What she found made her pause, eyes widening in disbelief. The warmth appearing beside her alerted her to her twin's arrival and his gasp almost made her jump, but she was too transfixed by the horror in front of her to do anything. Naruto was crumpled in the dirt, blood drying around him, with his silver axe discarded nearby. His skin was actively peeling off of his body, revealing a vile bubbling red energy underneath, and reforming just as fast. An eye cracked open, the iris flickered between tortured blue and glowing red, and a hand reached out for her. Mom. The agony in his rasped words broke her heart. It burns. In an instant, Artemis was at his side. Her hand wrapped around his as an act of comfort. Steam rose at the contact and she recoiled when he let out a yell of pain. Her eyes narrowed. This was not her first encounter with Lycaon's curse, but it was also not a transformation she was familiar with. She looked at her twin. He was still staring at them with his eyes wide and glowing. She scowled at him. Now. He had to use his precognitive domain now. Apollo. Sorry. He snapped himself out of whatever vision he saw. Right. Let me see him. Apollo was at their side in an instant, a hand on Naruto's head. The boy groaned at his touch, but it didn't hiss and steam like it had with hers. After a moment, his golden brows furrowed together. What? That can't be right. What is it? Artemis asked. She looked from her twin to her son before reaching for the latter. Her wrist was grabbed before she could make contact. Apollo. Sis, you saw what happened when you tried to touch him. Apollo warned. Her eyes narrowed and he responded in turn. Don't get mad at me. Blame Naruto's weird antibodies. They're the ones fighting off the curse. That's impossible. Artemis frowned as Apollo released her wrist. Lycaon's curse, unlike other monster afflictions, was inflicted on a mortal soul. It had no cure, because it irreversibly changed the recipient from a mortal human, or the occasional very unlucky demigod, into a Tartarus-bound monster. The rest of Apollo's words made her glare at him further. What do you mean, weird antibodies? I'll give you the full medical rundown later. We need to take him to an expert on impossible healing, Apollo said, slipping his arm under his nephew's legs. He hesitated before cradling the boy's shoulders and looked at Artemis after he hefted the writhing mortal up. If he knees me in the throat again, I'm dropping him in a volcano. Apollo. What? It hurt. October 12, 2008. Apollo leaned against the doorway of Artemis' small Colorado cabin and watched his sister dote on her slumbering son with a wet cloth, both of them surrounded by the wolves that also called this place home. He frowned at the subtle relief Artemis displayed in being able to touch him again. The initial problem with her touch boiled down to two things: her affinity for silver weaponry and her domain over the moon. The former was self-explanatory. Those affected by Lycaon's curse became deathly allergic to silver. The latter, however, was due to Naruto's immune system going on defense. The subtle radiation of Moonlight Artemis' form gave off was met with hostility from his weird nephew's equally weird biology. Thinking about the latter made Apollo want to kick himself. He should have given his lil nephew a thorough physical long before he ran away the first time. Whenever he did treat Naruto as a patient, it was usually for a deeper than normal scrape that Artemis wanted fixed ASAP, or a cold, or just a general checkup to see if his vitals matched that of other mortals or even demigods his age. At the least, he should have pulled Naruto aside after he'd been exposed to Egyptian and Norse magic. If he had then, it might not have taken hours of actual work for him and his amazing assistant to stabilize Naruto's bizarre reaction to Lycaon's curse. Again, I do wish you'd drop an I am before summoning me, father. The voice of his favorite son broke his thoughts. From where he sat at the dining table, Asclepius cleaned his glasses and gave him a frown. I've got patients outside of the Pantheon. I don't want them to panic if I'm suddenly whisked away to the United States during an appointment. Sorry, Ace. Desperate times. Apollo grinned at him. I'll make it up to you. You'll be covering the home visit fee, then? Asclepius asked, a small smile on his face. Quote. Wait. Apollo's grin faltered. There's a fee. We are in America now, father. And the materials we used weren't cheap to come by. What? But we manifested the wolves. You're pulling my leg. Apollo scowled and crossed his arms. Asclepius chuckled. I'm sorry, father. The opportunity was too good to waste. Has anyone ever told you that you're a brat? No, but I have been told I'm my father's son. Asclepius' bright blue eyes twinkled. Apollo mock laughed. Funny, he grumbled. If you're trying to get on stage with your material, I'd recommend workshopping it. I'll keep that in mind. Asclepius looked past him at Artemis and then looked back at him. Are you going to tell her today? Apollo pursed his lips. He knew what his son was referring to, but he was torn on the subject. Part of him wanted to forget what he knew and just let his nephew be, but he knew that this was long overdue. He sighed and pushed off of the wall. Might as well get this argument out of the way. Don't wait up, Ace. One step into the room had the wolves turn to watch him. Another step and they left, pups carried by older siblings and parents. The only wolf that remained was the new alpha, the big black wolf, Bruno. He was lying under the arm of the couch that Naruto's head was resting on, and watched him approach with icy blue eyes. The subtle lift of its lip, the subtle exposure of fang, had the god of archery stop in his tracks. He knew from prior experience with Artemis packs of old that they didn't care what god approached them unless it was their god, thus was the loyalty of canines. Sis, he said. We need to talk. Then speak. We should probably talk. I am not moving unless it pertains to an Olympian decree. Artemis' firm stance on the matter was put bluntly. She turned her head to meet his gaze and then looked back at her resting son. Just speak your mind, Apollo. Okay, but I warned you. Apollo sighed and crossed his arms. While looking at Naruto's soul, we discovered a 12th organ system. Explain. Artemis' body was turned towards him now, which was a good and bad thing. Good, because he knew she was paying attention to what he was saying and not tuning him out as she often did. Bad, because now he was in her crosshairs without anything between them. Again. Okay, here goes. Apollo mumbled before he cleared his throat. So, we both know that victims of LYC, Artemis scowled at the monster's name and he changed course. The Arcadian are turned because their soul is overridden by the curse Zeus left on him. Well, it turns out, Naruto's birth parents, or at least one of them, could manipulate the energies of their soul. Kind of like how we can, just on a lesser level. Impossible. Artemis rose. Naruto is immortal. The woman who gave birth to him was mortal. Ever verify that with Hades? Apollo asked. He glanced out the window toward the hunter's camp. An olive-skinned girl caught his eye. I mean, we have an in now. Stop staring at my lieutenant. Artemis, Apollo looked back at her just as she thrusted a finger up at his face. Quiet. I will not hear this nonsense any longer. Even if you are correct, and even if such a thing were true, what would it change? Artemis asked, scowling. Apollo frowned, trying to formulate his words. She crossed her arms. Now what is the purpose for telling me this ridiculous idea? Well, do you remember the kitsune he told the council about? Apollo asked in turn. She nodded curtly and he crossed his arms. Well. Yes I do. What's so important about it? It's definitely attached to him on a spiritual level. To a degree that something supernatural caused it. Apollo pointed out. If we find out what the markings on his arm mean. Did it ever occur to you that this kitsune, this spirit, had tricked you into thinking there was a system attached to Naruto's soul? Artemis asked suddenly. Apollo gaped at her, a bit surprised. Artemis. Tell me you've never been fooled by a mortal or nymph. Tell me without lying. When he failed to find an example, Artemis threw her arms up. We've all been fooled at one point or another, Apollo. You were caught in an illusion brought upon you by the foreign creature that Naruto has sealed in his arm, that's all. You think there's a spirit out there strong enough to catch both Asclepius and I in an illusion? No, she bitterly admitted. Her arms folded. But I know that if you do not poke a slumbering bear, it will not wake. The Artemis, we're gods. We've been alive for millennia. Apollo pointed at the teen on the couch. Whatever Naruto is, he's not something we've ever encountered before. He's not a god. He's not a spirit. Sis, I hate to say it, but he's definitely not a human. I know what Naruto is. Artemis, if you say mortal. He is immortal. Tell me what kind of mortal can survive Lycaon's curse. They glared at one another for several seconds before Apollo bowed his head and pinched the bridge of his nose. He took a deep breath, counted to 6 trillion, and released it. This wasn't getting them anywhere. He looked at his sister again. Sis, we need to figure out what Naruto is before the Thunderer figures out he's not human. You and your son are not experimenting on him. Artemis glared past him, likely at Asclepius. Apollo sidestepped to block his son out of her line of sight and she glared at him again. Is that understood? We'll do a soul dive. Out of the question. You could risk damaging it. We have to figure this out, sis. Apollo put a hand on her shoulder and stared her in the eye. Artemis, I would never do anything like this to him if it wasn't important. You know that. Quote. I know. Artemis frowned. She hung her head and took a shuddering breath. But he's my son. Mine. And I keep failing him. Now, he almost. I know, sis. Apollo pulled her into a hug when her eyes squeezed shut. He ignored the sounds that he convinced himself Artemis never made and instead rubbed her back. I know. Apollo remembered the first time he actually had to come to terms with one of his demigods, deaths. It was the worst feeling imaginable and it took a long time until he could hide the pain as well as the other Olympians. Artemis had lost many of her hunters over the years, but the boy on the couch was the only mortal she'd watched grow from birth. For the first time in their long life, his twin was experiencing something most Olympians had gone through eons ago, the realization that her mortal child would die. Regardless of the actions she took to protect him, short of making him immortal, Artemis would see her first, and likely her only, son die. If not by the preferred but still sad, old age, then by the claw of a monster or the hand of a god. Kurama growled as it tried to focus its chakra through the body of the boy and keep it from changing further than it already had. The venom it had been assimilating for the past 53 hours was unlike any poison it had ever overwhelmed before. Something on the outside had managed to dilute the extreme reaction that was happening. For that, Kurama was grateful. Mito had never experienced anything like this venom, and the bitch had adamantly refused to let it help her even when their lives were on the line. The sound of an impressed whistle made Kurama go still. As impossible as it had thought to be, someone else had entered the seal. Well, that's different. Tired red eyes cracked open and regarded the small humanoid figures in front of it, before glaring particularly at the blonder of the two for his uncanny resemblance to the man that tried to divide its power. Both men radiated power that rivaled its own, but they held no rule over it. This was its territory. It refused to bend to their whims on principle and would defend itself. Not that it could, thanks to the meddling of that damned boy, but they didn't know that. What do you think? The older-looking male deferred to the idiot blonde. A genetic mutation of the curse. Nah, too much spiritual energy in here. Idiot blonde, not to be confused with the blonde idiot aka the Yondaime, crossed his arms and tilted his head. Then he looked at the old man. Mutualistic symbiosis. Quote. Yes, the collar would imply they have a relationship of some kind. Kurama bared its teeth and growled. The irons latched around its neck was not a collar. It was a shackle. Uh-oh, I think he heard you. Idiot blonde smirked at old man. Who are you, humans? Kurama narrowed its eyes. And how did you get in here? Well, no. Idiot blonde grinned and his eyes started to glow gold. Not human. Oh. You. Kurama huffed and closed its eyes. It was too tired to deal with this buffoon of an immortal and the other with it. Go away. Good spirit, the old man began, but Kurama cut him off. I am not a spirit nor am I negotiating with petty immortals who threaten to kill innocent creatures out of fear. It growled. It cracked its eye open and glared at the two gods. If you are here about the monster's venom, I'm dealing with it. The boy will remain mostly unchanged. Yeah, think twice before you screw with my nephew's body, fox. Idiot blonde scowled. Kitsune. Kurama corrected firmly with a growl. The boy got a pass due to their connection and that was it. It fanned its 9 tails out and reveled in the minute shock that crossed the idiot blonde's face. I see you're familiar with the lessers like me. Yeah, and I can skin them easily. Let me assure you, Godeling. I know I may not be a threat to you, but the boy's mother is. Quote. That's not a collar is it? The old man realized. Smart one, he. Kurama looked at him and stretched its neck. The iron shackle glowed with the same runes that covered the boy's arm as it tried to pass the glowing markers that kept it in this small cage. Thanks to his meddling with powers he didn't fully understand, the boy and I are irreversibly intertwined. It huffed and looked back at the idiot blonde with its version of a smirk. Anything you do to me, you do to him. I'm willing to test that. The idiot blonde grumbled, a bow appearing in his hand. Kurama snarled at the flash of gold that accompanied the weapon's arrival. It reminded him of that fool Yondaime and his damned teleportation. Apollo, the old man put a hand on idiot blonde's arm. We're here to help Naruto, remember? Pretty sure I'd be doing him a solid by putting some arrows in this thing's hide. Father. The old man hissed and tightened his grip on the idiot blonde's arm. It's a mutualistic symbiosis. They will share experiences from all things, both good and bad. Quote. And that's why I never got married. Idiot blonde grumbled, dismissing his bow. He pointed at Kurama. If I see any furry ears or tails sprout. Why does everyone think I would do that? First it was Mito's concern for her children, then it was the bitch, and now this idiot, Kurama wondered aloud with a scowl. It shook its head and laid back down with a tired huff. Just go, gods. I'm dealing with the venom. The boy will remain physically unchanged. And mentally? The old man asked. Kurama scowled at him. I was starting to tolerate you. It grumbled before sighing. There are some things I cannot affect due to this shackle. The murderous rampages it seems to trigger I can cull to near non-existence, but heightened emotional responses, instincts and senses will remain. That better be it. Idiot blonde mumbled, crossing his arms. Or I'll come back here with Artemis, and we'll see what she has to say about this. Get out, idiot god. Kurama snarled, closing its eyes. You're annoying and I've got work to do. November 20th, 2008. The past month had been hell. First and foremost, Naruto didn't get to celebrate his 18th birthday. All in all, not a major loss. He'd spent it dealing with one of the most feared monsters his mother's pantheon created and avenged the death of his mortal friend. That counted as a win. Thanks to the mist's influence, Jeremy's parents believe him to have been a victim of poachers, violence, and now Mr. Higginsworth was an advocate of wildlife preservation. So that was also a win. The Mrs. was, unfortunately, still a racist. Second, he'd been grounded. Again. He couldn't leave the vicinity of his mother's lodge. Thankfully his college had been closed because of Lycaon's rampage, and most of his classes were done for the semester anyway. Without that escape, both his mother and Uncle Fred alternated watching him. On days where both were needed to be present for a council meeting, his, cousin Asclepius would take over. Those days were the most informative for Naruto. He learned that his survival was based in part of the fox, which wasn't too surprising given their deal, and a cocktail derived from a sacred spring's rainwater, concentrated silver and ground snippets of wolf's bane. Finally, said grounding had also included the revoking of his cell phone privileges. Uncle Fred took the phone for the first month after he woke up. That was probably for the best because his senses were heightened to, in Uncle Fred's words, Wolverine levels. Naruto had thought his uncle was exaggerating. Then a call came through on his cell phone and he nearly went deaf from the ring. For the first time since he got his phone, he utilized the text messaging feature and sent the caller, a certain daughter of Zeus who had already called him numerous times since his birthday, a text telling her he'd call her back after he got his phone returned. It started going off like crazy after and, before he started blacking out from sensory overload, Uncle Fred took the device away. So yeah, super hearing. Overrated. Don't even get him started on his new sense of smell. His already impressive nose was so sensitive that freshly bloomed flowers tended to make him sneeze from miles away, and the wolves' previously well-hidden droppings were nauseating. Thankfully, that was just the first week after he awoke. With Asclepius' help, and a healthy new morning pill made of the same materials used to stabilize his reaction to Lycaon's bite, his enhanced senses were suppressed in record time. Now, it was the week before Thanksgiving. The hunt had long been back at their duty of scouring the Midwest for the Titan's secret supply line, and his mother was needed for more regular and risky searches. Uncle Fred, who'd finally given him his phone back the day before, was needed to try to speak to the various minor gods he still had good favor with. So when Naruto answered the knock at the cabin door, after hearing no racing heart, smelling a heavenly fragrant, and not being warned of ill intent by the fox, the last thing he expected was to be pulled into the world's deadliest embrace. Ooh, look at you. My little bundle of a grandson has gotten so big. We survived months in an Immortal Run hotel, the attack of a rabid man-dog in its pack, and even your own stupidity. The fox groused. Boy, only your bloodline would die to something as ridiculous as affectionate asphyxiation. I can't believe that a hug is going to be what kills me. Shut up, fox. Naruto grumbled, a grimace on his face as he was crushed by the woman holding him. She was tall, easily a head taller than himself, and vastly stronger than Lycaon could ever hope to be. Thankfully, his current situation was not due to malicious intent. Twisting his face out of the woman's covered bosom, he huffed. Gran, I missed you, too, but I can't breathe. Oh, sorry, dear. Leto smiled as she let him go. She cupped his face and kissed either of his cheeks, before holding him at arm's length. Look at what a handsome man you've become. You must have your pick of the village's girls, huh? Naruto felt his cheeks, ears and the rest of his face burn. What was he supposed to say to that? The fox laughed at his dismay. Stupid animal. Mother. Saved by the moon goddess. We've talked about this. Artemis. Leto released Naruto's face and crushed her daughter the same way he'd been crushed before. Oh, my sweet moonlight, how are you? Suffocating, most likely. The fox snorted. Naruto would have laughed, if his ribcage didn't just snap back into place. Gods above, his grandmother had wicked strength. I'm glad you could come, Artemis said as she returned the hug. Sorry to have you come all this way. Oh, think nothing of it. Leto smiled as they pulled apart. She folded her hands in front of her. So, what seems to be the problem? Well, Naruto grimaced as his mother looked at him and crossed her arms. All signs of joy at her mother's presence were gone. Artemis glanced back at Leto. Naruto needs a sitter. I'm legally an adult now, this is ridiculous. The 18-year-old in question grumbled. He hissed as a pair of calloused fingers grabbed his ear. Unbidden, a whine ripped from his throat as he protested, ow ow ow. You clearly lack the self-preservation instincts required to be considered such. Artemis deadpanned. Your connection blocked me from my sacred lands. Were it not for the current threat of the Titans, I would see to your punishment myself. What happened? Leto asked, an amused smile on her face. Artemis regaled her with the story of the past month, all the while keeping Naruto's ear firmly in hand, and the smile swiftly fell from his grandmother's face. The teen grimaced and shrank down under her piercing stare. I see. Yes, you can be sure that I will keep an eye on him, Artemis. Thank you, mother. Artemis smiled. She turned to regard Naruto with a frown and released his ear. I expect you to behave yourself. You will not partake in underage consumption of Dionysus, preferred beverages. You will not go into Colorado Springs without your grandmother. And furthermore, you will not hunt without Leto's approval. Her hand moved to grip the piercing in his right brow. He cringed at the rush of power that flowed into it and heard the fox growl. As soon as the invasive feeling of power was noticed, it was gone, and Artemis turned back to Leto. You're now keyed into his tracker, mother. He will not go anywhere without you knowing about it. And I thought being shackled to a clan of idiots was humiliating. The fox grumbled. We've been chipped like a common house pet. Are you listening? Naruto blinked, his eyes refocused on his mother's scowl. He nodded. An amber brow arched. Then what did I say? No hunting, no college parties, and no gallivanting like Uncle Fred, Naruto said sullenly, his arms crossed. He wasn't about to go get wasted or take off like his uncle did in search of knightly conquests, but the hunting thing really bothered him. Grandmother makes the rules and has access to my tracker. At the first sign of trouble I should call her, your Uncle Fred before anyone else. Yes, well, good. Artemis blinked. Clearly she hadn't expected him to be paying attention, but Naruto had been working on his subliminal attentiveness long before Lysound came and screwed up his life. It hadn't been until after said screwing that he made any headway. His mother gave him a tight hug, one he readily returned. Behave for your grandmother. I will. Naruto smiled softly as they pulled back. Love you, Mom. And I you. Artemis assured him, cupping his cheek and stroking one of the marks on his face with her thumb. Abruptly, she tore away and left, the door shut behind her with a soft click. My goodness. Leto breathed before chuckling. I'd have never thought Artemis would emote so much to a young man before. Gran. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose and fought back the bile that had rushed up his esophagus. The undertone she suggested was clear as day and it literally repulsed him. She's my mother. By nurture, not nature. Leto tittered at the disgusted face he made at the implication. The Greek pantheon had a major issue that the modern world considered taboo, but always ignored it. As his grandmother did just now. She all but glided across the floor to take his shoulders under an arm and guide him away. Ah yes, Oedipus' story has sullied that relationship for mortals, hasn't it? Can we please change this topic? Naruto groaned. He was so not going to talk about sex with his grandmother. Oh fine. Leto set him at the table and turned to start rifling through his sparse cupboards. What do you like to eat? Ramen. It was quick, filling and easily made. Blessed be the Olympian that influenced instant microwavable meals. Sage bless us for the noodle's creation and trans-dimensional existence. The fox crowed. Naruto snorted at the weird statement, but didn't bother disagreeing. Leto turned to him with a frown. Is that all? I make salads or stew. Naruto shrugged at her flat stare. I had rabbit and mouse traps strewn about before my birthday came. Whenever the pack would go hunt, I would go check them. So you don't have any cooking materials here. I've got salt, pepper and beef jerky. Order, help me, Leto sighed into her hand. Do you have a motorcar? Uncle Fred replaced my wrecked Jeep with a pickup. It had been a Ferrari, which he'd thought was too out of place, loud and flashy in the mountains, before Apollo punished him by turning it into a beat-up junker. Naruto took to fixing it up while he was under Asclepius' watch. The god of medicine was rather knowledgeable on proper vehicle welfare. For home visits, he was told. But I haven't driven it yet. Then we will go acquire some food and break it in. Come along, grandson. Naruto hung his head and groaned. So began yet another punishment. Why was this his life? The trip into the city was long and arduous. The latter was admittedly Leto's fault, but she failed to see appeal in the noise her grandson was so enthused by. Harsh vocals, loud obnoxious pounding drums, and strings that were being abused more than they were plucked did not make music in her mind. Honestly, she needed to have a word or two with Apollo about this metal genre. It was so terribly aggressive. Other than their disagreement on what counted as music of the modern era, the long trip was a smooth one. Her nephew was a safe driver, constantly diligent when he wasn't grumbling to some fox character. That was a mite concerning, she'd have to inquire to Artemis about it, and they made it to Colorado Springs with time to spare. The city was in mourning for the recently lost mortals, so they were, for the most part, left alone. Halfway through their traversal of the local grocer, Naruto's cellular phone rang. He checked the number, sighed and then answered. Leto, ever the vigilant caretaker she was, casually eavesdropped on his end of the conversation. Hey, I meant to say, well, I was unconscious for a week and then grounded for the past month, so that made it a little difficult. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Leto's ears perked with the name he said next. No, Talia, I was unconscious. No, there weren't more mafia shootouts. Well, I don't think they're that petty, but what do I know? He rolled his eyes. Yes, I'm grown enough to admit that I've been wrong before, that doesn't count. No, it doesn't. We were kids, that's why. Leto kept her features schooled, but questions swelled in her. Who is this, Talia, girl that drew such emotional responses from her grandson? What was their relationship? What happened when they were kids? I am going to tell you why I was unconscious, but you kept changing the subject, Naruto said with a huff. He rubbed his face and groaned. Stop making everything an argument. Yes, you do. Half the time I don't even. Oh, for the gods sake, would you please let me get a word in, tree girl? Leto's eyes sparkled. Her grandson had a pet name for a girl. Oh, this young woman absolutely had to be met. Yes, it involves the Arcadian king. I'm calling him that because I'm in town right now. No, classes are done for the rest of the semester. I'm on a supply run with my grandmother. Why would I joke about that? What did I do? You're the one getting upset. Talia, I can barely hear you over the static. Take a deep breath and calm down, Talia. He pulled his phone away from his ear and looked at the screen with a scowl. Oh, terrific. Now she's going to be mad when she calls back. Did you drop the call? Leto asked, grabbing a bunch of bananas. He eyed her warily as he pocketed his phone. She smiled at him. Sorry, darling. I couldn't resist listening. Of course you couldn't. Oh, that was his mother's petulant pout, for sure. He ran his hand through his hair and down his face. No, she just got too worked up and overloaded the phone. Again. Overloaded. Was that slang for something? Naruto looked around, a needless gesture given that Leto could pull the mist around them whenever she wanted, but if it made him feel better she wouldn't comment on it. His next words almost made her drop the cantaloupe in her hands. Talia's a daughter of Zeus. Oh. Leto's eyebrows skyrocketed. Her grandson was involved with a daughter of Zeus. Wait, then overloaded meant, well, perhaps she should give him some advice on how to avoid any shocks during intimacy. Wouldn't do to have him end a night with a sore red. Oh, that reminded her. Naruto, be a dear and grab a bag of red delicious, will you? Sure. He grabbed the bag of red apples and set it in the cart. So, does Talia live close? Leto so dearly wanted to meet this demi-goddess. No. Drat. She lives in New York, goes to camp, and since I've been banned we've just been talking over the phone. Kind of surprised she hasn't had monster issues from it. She may be experiencing some favoritism given that her father is the king, Leto said thoughtfully. You haven't used iris messaging. I'm not big on the concept of spontaneous magical conversation overseen by an immortal and amoral third party. He grimaced, and Leto rolled her eyes. Clearly, he'd learned his mother's habit of utilizing practical methods over willed whims of mysticism. It was astounding he even used a cellular phone. Talia used it once while I was in the middle of my morning workout. Did she really? Leto asked, cracking a smile as they moved up from produce toward the deli. How did that go? Poorly, I guess. He shrugged. She hasn't done it again since. Leto definitely had to get the story behind that out of this girl. She just needed a reason to visit Zeus demi-goddess, or have her visit. Oh, perhaps she could send for her to help celebrate her grandsons. No, that was too tainted a day by this point. Perhaps the girl's mother would be willing to take a holiday out of state. Does she live with her mother in New York? Her mother died while she was turned into a tree. I beg your pardon. Leto frowned. Though rightfully upset at Zeus for betting yet another mortal after his vow, Hera wasn't petty enough to take vengeance on that mortal directly. The irony one might think of in how she thought such defense is understandable, but the bad ichor between Leto and Hera had been laid to rest after her children ascended to council status. The queen even allowed her to keep her position as a minor goddess of motherhood, as long as dutiful reports were exchanged from time to time. Hera was spiteful, but she didn't hold grudges against the participants of Zeus' infidelities. Well, not long ones anyway. Naruto sighed and the elder goddess braced herself for the story. It was a recounting from his best understanding of it, but nevertheless it was detailed. His tale had wrapped up while they were checking out. The mist distracted the cashier from their conversation. Regardless, Leto hadn't braced herself well enough. So, in an effort to spite Lord Hades' justified anger, Zeus turned this poor girl into a tree. Leto asked, incredulous and outraged. I mean, he was trying to save her from being in Hades' clutches. Naruto mumbled as he started bagging items after they were scanned. And it was kind of a reward in its own way. I'm going to pretend you didn't just say that. Leto muttered as she gave the platinum card all Olympians used to the cashier. A tree. That poor girl. She was 15 when she came out, so she really only lost like a few years at best. Naruto shrugged as he grabbed a good portion of their bags. I dunno, time's been screwy for me ever since I met Kansu. That is another conversation we need to have at a later date. Leto mumbled, grabbing the rest of the groceries. Still, this girl is living alone in New York. Why is she not staying at camp? From what I gather, someone on Olympus is pulling strings to get her alone. Naruto frowned. Come to think of it, that's got to be a terrible idea. We're in the middle of a war. Talia's a powerhouse, sure, but she's also a primary target. You're absolutely right. She shouldn't be alone. Gran, no offense, but I don't like the way you phrased that. Leto ignored him, she was already formulating plans. The next festivity celebrated in America was the family one she could never get the twins to attend a dinner for. Oh, they would drop by or ring her up with Iris aid, but they never stayed for a nice dinner. This girl that was important to her grandson had no one to celebrate with this year. Likewise, her grandson spent too many holidays on his own. On her vow as a minor goddess of motherhood, Leto swore it would be the last time that either did. November 27, 2008. Oh gods, why is there so much of this crap? Talia groaned as she looked through the GED study guide that she'd ordered a few weeks ago. 2 months ago, she began what should have been her senior semester. She was fed up with it before the first week had ended, but pushed herself to get through it. A week after what everyone was calling the Colorado incident, and just days after Whiskers went silent on her again, she stopped going entirely. Her apartment's voicemail had received several calls from the school and Chiron. Given that he was her legal guardian, he was informed about her streak of absences, but she didn't care. There were too many other things for her to be worried about, like the Titans, the ever-growing size of their army, Whiskers' sudden silence, and then there was Luke's predicament. After last summer, during her fateful encounter with her apparently revived and now possessed former friend, her head was occasionally clouded by various thoughts. Was what happened to him my fault? Was I supposed to kill the Ophiuchorus? Could Luke still be saved? Did I kill him for nothing? Is Luke even still in there? Does Luke blame me? Do Whiskers and Annie blame me? Do I blame myself? Did they hate me? Do I hate me? With these questions tormenting her daily, she got into more fights whenever she caught word of the snide comments from some of the school's elite. The morons that acted as Eleanor Roosevelt High School school board thought she was just a dumb troublemaker. Now, Talia didn't feel like she was meant to be a scholar, but by no means was she stupid. The solution, in her mind, was simple. She was having problems in school, so she should just take school out of the equation that was her life. Granted, she knew that if she'd asked, Annabeth would more than willingly help her, but that felt like a cheap cop-out. The other kids didn't have immediate access to one of the smartest people in the world to help them with their homework, and they were doing fine. Talia convinced herself that her step was the most logical one. Trying to figure this mess out myself is so crazy, whined the scared voice that Talia denied existed as she stared at the GED study guide. I'm in over my head. Shut up. Talia scowled at the voice's negative attitude. It had been bothering her since she accidentally fried her phone during the call with Whiskers last week. She managed to call him with her landline to get the rest of his story out of him, but after that call she realized that she couldn't contact him, or Annie, that way during the day without rousing their suspicions. Iris messaging either of them was off of the table, more for Whiskers than Annie for obvious reasons, so she was essentially stuck at home going through her old textbooks and struggling to read them while waiting for time to go by. Thankfully, her GED study guide arrived today. Ah, forget this, stupid dyslexia. Talia grumbled, closing the book and tossing it onto the coffee table. The doorbell rang and she groaned before getting off of the couch. If this wasn't her pizza, she was going to shock whoever was bothering her. Need for secrecy, be damned. The bell rang again. And again. I'm coming, gods, keep your shirt. Talia stared dumbly as she held the door open. On. Whiskers stood on the other side of the door, wearing his acid-stained jacket over his favorite, and Talia suspected it to be likely his only, shirt and a silver scarf around his neck. He wore dark jeans that looked like they fit just right and white worn-out sneakers. In his hands were bags of food and slung over his shoulder was his black backpack. He gave her a small, sheepish grin. Hey, Talia. Whiskers gestured to the beautiful woman standing beside him with a nod of his head. This is my grandmother, Leto. Talia looked at the woman with bronzed skin, who looked like she'd just flown in from Florida. She was dressed to impress for a New York City winter with an expensive puffy white coat that fell to her knees and matching earmuffs, gray stockings covering her legs that tucked into black winter boots magazine cover models would wear. Hair the color of the night sky fell to her shoulders like a curtain. In her hands, she carried a large crockpot like it weighed absolutely nothing. Happy Thanksgiving, dear. The goddess' pleasant smile was accompanied by an equally pleasant voice. Ever a master of words and her wit quick as a whip, Talia responded accordingly. By slamming the door shut. Turkey. The name of a European country. A term used to describe the phenomena of making 3 strikes in a row while bowling. And, as it's most commonly known, a bird to be hunted and eaten on the North American holiday. It was also infamously known from the myth associated with one Benjamin Franklin and his non-existent desire to name it the new nation's national bird. It is said that this myth was spread from high on Olympus, after Zeus felt slighted when Franklin insulted the freshly drafted eagle insignia of the presidency. November 27, 2008. We should have called ahead, Naruto said. Talia slamming the door on them was much tamer than the reaction he'd had braced himself for. Leto merely hummed before she rang the bell again. And spoil the surprise. I think not. Gran, Talia and surprises don't mesh well. Not unless she's in on it. One unfortunate summer evening on the road after the girl missed 3 nights worth of sleep sprang to the forefront of his mind. He shivered. That poor cat chose the wrong alleyway to jump out of that night. Luke had managed to keep Annabeth distracted during the aftermath while he consoled the mortified demi-goddess of Zeus. Naruto shook his head, banishing the memory back to the depths of his mind. Need I remind you, she's a demigod. Their adrenaline is basically always going. She certainly must lower her guard. Hello again, dear. Leto smiled as the door opened again. Sorry. Please come in. Talia gave the goddess a free pass with a sheepish smile. When Naruto tried to follow, she stopped him with a hand on his chest. I need to borrow Whiskers for a second. He hadn't even been in New York long enough to do anything. Although, if dinner took too long to cook, he could go for a jog. Break in his new shoes, maybe a few noses. Typical stress relief. Let me take his bags first, he's carrying perishables. Leto snapped her fingers, and the food along with his overnight rucksack was moved from his hands and shoulder to somewhere in Talia's apartment. She smiled at them, almost as if she knew something he didn't. Not surprising, given that she was a goddess, but still. Don't take too long, I'm going to need help in the kitchen. Oh, we won't. Just one sec. Talia assured with a pleasant smile before she closed the door. The glare that was leveled on him once she turned around promised nothing good. Negative emotions, dead ahead. The fox mumbled. Yikes, that's a lot of them. I didn't think humans could hold that much negative feeling in them. I'd always thought it would make them explode or something. That is so freaking useful right now, thanks Fox. Naruto lamented his companion's dark sense of humor. Whiskers, Talia growled. She looked ready to hit him. Or shock him. Either way, he wasn't looking forward to her next action. Hence why he tensed when her finger jabbed into his sternum with each of her next words. What the hell? Don't get mad at me. This was all her idea. Naruto hissed, gesturing past the irate daughter of Zeus at the door. She had me packed in my car before I even knew what was happening. And you didn't think to, I don't know, call. Talia growled. As far as I know, your phone is still dead. Naruto narrowed his eyes when her scowl deepened. That was a silent affirmative if he ever saw one. Besides, grandmother wanted to surprise you. I was hoping you'd be at Percy's or Annie's or even at camp so that we could go back to Colorado and away from Olympus. 1. Percy is a kelp head. If we're together for too long he gets on my nerves and vice versa. 2. Annie's at camp. And 3. I'm not going back to Camp Half-Blood until the 23rd of December at the earliest. Talia huffed with the last declaration, even going so far as to cross her arms. What? Why not? Naruto blinked, confused by the declaration. He hated being out of the loop. He had to get some kind of eyes back on the Olympians, demigods. His uncle always used to keep him informed when he was in Pennsylvania, so what was keeping him from, oh, right. Yeah, running away twice and blocking him out of a state might have put you in the doghouse. The fox deadpanned. His words, while true, were unwarranted and unnecessary. Chiron's a stickler for grades, and my father's cabin absolutely sucks to live in. It's practically a shrine to his ego. The sky boomed outside and Talia rolled her eyes. Tell me I'm wrong, old man. Oh, she's a rebel. The fox drawled sarcastically. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose and took a deep breath. Talia was clearly feeling as if she were being smothered for some reason or another. It happened a handful of times back in the day whenever Luke tried to take charge of their merry little band. Must be due to whatever Olympian kept bothering her, not that he knew which it was. She was frustratingly tight-lipped about it whenever he asked. Regardless, nothing he could say would convince her to go back to Camp Half-Blood if she was this dead set against it. Fine. That's your call, he said finally. He frowned at her scowl. Hey, I'm on your side, tree girl. So stop getting mad at me for stuff that's not my fault. Oh. Talia's eyes narrowed. So, I could get mad at you for, I don't know, the whole time where you didn't call me. I already told you, Naruto sighed. Gran wanted to surprise you. Ever since my birthday. That's exactly what I was talking about. Talia interjected. She jabbed him in the chest again, eyes sparking. Every news station in America is calling whatever happened that day the Colorado incident, Whiskers. It's so bad even unworthy mortals are aware of it. Except this time, the camps got no idea what actually went down. I don't even know what the hell happened because you've been unreachable for a month. So why didn't you just call me? He frowned. Hadn't they gone over this? I was unconscious aft. I was talking about calling me before whatever went down. Talia growled. Her hand gesticulated, almost as if she wanted to grab him, punch him, hit him, likely do something violent, before she balled it into a fist and let it rest at her side. The other was dragged over her face in frustration before she glared at him again. I would have helped you, you idiot. Naruto blinked. Wait, hold on. She was mad because he didn't ask for help. The thought was nice, but practically speaking. Talia, you live 2 time zones away from me. Well, essentially that. Wait, did I say that out loud? You sure did. The fox guffawed. Sage, I wish I had some ramen for this. This is going to be amazing. Newsflash, Whiskers, there's these magical things called cars, pretty sure you have one. Or there's a larger version called a train. Gods, if I had to, I would have flown out there. Talia scowled and cut him off before he could speak. No, I wouldn't have liked it, but I would have done it, because that's what friends do. Ah. That certainly puts things in perspective. Alright, you've made your point. Naruto held his hands up to placate her, since she was, sort of, right. He sighed and rested one on his hip while he rubbed his forehead with the other. Look, the next time the former king of Arcadia abducts my only mortal friend, kills him, then spends a day playing cat and mouse with me before finally trying to turn me into his newest pack member, I'll call you. Are we good now? The Immortals. Talia's outrage had turned into flat shock. Whiskers, is that why you were unconscious for so long? You were bitten by Lysoun. It was at this point Naruto realized he might have said too much. Number. Maybe she'd buy it. It was a long shot, but he'd said stupider things when he was younger. It is. She gaped. You were bitten. Damn it, Talia, Naruto thought with a frustrated groan. Stop being able to see through my lies. It's almost as if you lived on the road together for months on end. The fox muttered with a snort. The peanut gallery's commentary is unwelcome and unwanted. He snapped at his tagalong. How did you survive? Uncle Fred and one of my, cousins essentially cured it. Naruto shrugged. That's what they told him anyway. As far as he was aware, the fox just took parts of the curse and applied it to his biology. He still wasn't sure what that entailed, aside from the enhanced senses. I can't believe you. Talia's eyes narrowed once more. Before Naruto could blink, she had grabbed the lapels of his jacket and pushed him against the wall across from her door. Drywall cracked. He winced, briefly, and then steeled his features when orbs of lightning had replaced her blue eyes. You went toe-to-toe with freaking Lysound. Alone. Are you crazy or just stupid? Both. The fox deadpanned. You've officially been uninvited to this conversation. Naruto thought sourly. He grunted when he was pulled from the wall and shoved back into it. That hurt. Whoever said drywall was flimsy was a liar and deserved to have their tongue cut out. Talia, chill. Don't you dare tell me to chill, Whiskers. Talia snapped. How am I supposed to be chill when one of my best friends has a freaking death wish? I don't have a death wish. Naruto protested with a scowl. You are supposed to be quiet right now. You attacked a mob boss, your apartment was turned into a crime scene and you got arrested for manslaughter. Talia cut him off with a hiss. She jabbed her finger into his chest again. Okay, that was starting to get annoying. All of that happened in January. You spent most of your spring in Boston doing only gods know what, and I'm sure it wasn't working some kind of resort job. Understatement of the century. The fox grumbled. I will mount your head on the wall of my mother's temple. I guess the only time you weren't trying to get yourself killed was during the summer. Talia continued. Her lip curled. His eyes narrowed. She wasn't going to say what he thought she was she? But you were awfully content to just let us go off to die on our own again, weren't you? Happy just to be another mortal like everyone else. She did. She actually said it. Okay. No. Line crossed. In one swift motion, Naruto grabbed Talia's hands, removed them from his person and reversed their positions, pinning her hands beside her head. His knee blocked hers when it expectedly rose up, and his foot shifted to the side to avoid her stomp. He glared into her eyes before he spoke through clenched teeth. Calm down. Her sparking eyes narrowed, so he did the same. You are allowed to be angry. Gee, quiet. Naruto snapped, startling her from her reasonably pissed retort. He wasn't in the mood to deal with her attitude. His eyes shifted focus between either of hers, waiting for the sparks to die down. When they did seconds later, he continued. Talia, you are allowed to be angry, but making baseless accusations like that is not okay. I'm your friend, remember? You want to know why I didn't go with you guys in June? Why had I wanted to go to my classes instead? I'll tell you, but this fit you're having. It needs to stop. Now. Or else what? Talia scowled. You'll make me. Do you really think I could make you do anything? Naruto shot back lowly. If Talia had wanted to, she could have shocked him at any time after he reversed the pin on her. That she hadn't, even by accident, said a lot about how much she trusted him. He wasn't going to abuse that trust. Even now his grip on her arms was loose enough to keep her restrained, but not hurt her too much. Her silence after his question gave him his answer in volumes. Yeah, I probably can't. What I will do if you won't stop doing this, is just leave. Naruto watched her eyes dilate and filed that away to address later. Right now, had a point to make. Gran will be mad at me, but she'll get over it. I'll leave, Talia. For good. We can live out our lives on opposite sides of the country and we can forget the other even exists. Does that sound better to you? She furrowed her brows together, likely trying to figure out if he was bluffing. He wasn't. Talia. He grit his teeth and curled his lip. Don't think I won't. You gonna let me go? Her words were soft, and the heat in her glower had dropped several degrees. He arched his brow. Are you done trying to emulate your father? For now. The petulant grumble was probably the closest to a yes he was going to get. Naruto released her and took a step back. He crossed his arms as she rubbed her wrists. While she continued to give him a dirty look, he took a deep breath and started to rub his head with one hand. This spontaneous visit was going just about as well as he had expected it to go. The only upside thus far was that he hadn't been shocked yet. So, Talia broke the quiet, and Naruto looked at her. Her arms were crossed, and there was a frown on her face. He closed his eyes and took another deep breath once more. Talia, I didn't go with you guys because what you were saying was true. Naruto grumbled before he opened his eyes to meet hers again. He crossed his arms when he saw the victorious smirk on her face. That wouldn't do. To an extent. Part of him reveled in the scowl she gained. Another, quieter part noted that her freckles were more apparent whenever she smiled in comparison. That was an odd observation he'd have to wonder about later. I'm going to need more to go on than that. And you'll get it. He glanced at the slight crack in the wall beside her. But I think this hallway's taken enough damage from one of our discussions. Talia's face flushed as she flicked her gaze to the wall she'd pinned him against. Her cheeks darkened and she looked away. Naruto's brow furrowed. That was a weird reaction. Then again, she was probably thinking about how she'd have to explain the damage to her benefactor. He didn't envy her there, it was bound to be embarrassing. Part of him wanted to be there to see it. So, what? We go in and finish this in my apartment with your grandmother as a witness? Talia asked after clearing her throat. An attempt to cover her embarrassment maybe. Oh, wait. She thought that whole exchange wasn't witnessed. Might as well pop that bubble. My grandmother's been eavesdropping ever since the door shut behind her. Naruto snorted. Talia stared at him. You're kidding. I don't think I am. He turned and glowered at the door. Am I, Gran? The door cracked open and Leto frowned down at him. Don't intrude on my fun, grandson. Then stop eavesdropping on my conversations. Naruto shot back without any heat. He looked at Talia. She was so red that she looked about ready to join up with the Killer Tomato Brigade. He sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. Dinner first, then talk. Sure. Talia squeaked before rushing into the apartment. He watched her go in confusion, then looked at his grandmother. Leto shrugged. I've only just met her, dear. She smiled. Now come in and hang up your coat. I'm going to have you on the vegetables. Should have finished fighting your mate prospect for dominance. Now there is an abundance of pheromones in the air. The fox huffed. And you haven't determined who will be the top. Even the bitch and her idiot had that sorted out by this point. Please just shut up, fox. Naruto grumbled as he walked into the apartment. Water ran abundantly from the swan-necked faucet. Talia splashed more on her face before she turned off the bathroom sink and braced herself against it. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. Not a single freckle had grown in size nor had she sprouted more eyeballs. So, why did her face still feel like it was on fire? Talia closed her eyes and groaned as the answer came to her just as swiftly as the question had. She could still feel the heat radiating from his body while it was so close to hers, regardless of who was in control. The careful, near-steel grip she could have broken out of at any time had sent a thrill down her spine. But what captivated her most of all were his eyes. Two frozen oceans that withheld nothing of how he felt and demanded respect that she was, admittedly, not showing him. Especially with the words she said before he turned the tables on her. I went too far. Talia frowned. I'll apologize for it after he gives me his reasoning. My oh my. So much growth and I didn't even have to twitch a finger. A familiar bell of laughter echoed in her head. The demigod opened her eyes and glared at her reflection. Or rather, she glared at the goddess that was appearing behind it. Go away, Aphrodite. The goddess clicked her tongue. So I can leave you and that hunk unsupervised? Absolutely not. Aphrodite flicked a fan open and hid her face behind it as she laughed. Oh, Talia. If I left you to your own devices you'd get nowhere fast. That power move of yours backfired horribly, now didn't it? I was getting too angry. Talia scowled at the admission. She tightened her grip on the counter. I always do that. Whiskers snapped me out of it with his bluff. Now, Talia. Aphrodite snapped the fan closed and folded her arms under her bust. Be honest with yourself, do you really think he was bluffing? He was. Talia bit on her lip and her hands balled into fists. He wouldn't, Whiskers wouldn't actually do that. Leave her apartment. Maybe. Talia wouldn't be too surprised if Whiskers had done that. But cut ties altogether. Even if he's just a mortal, that'd be too far. Right. And how would you know? Aphrodite asked, sauntering around to her other side. Your Whiskers is just a mortal. He can only handle so much of your abuse. Abuse? Talia glared at the reflection. You belittled and berated that poor boy, for what? For not going to the very place your father banned him from entering upon threat of his own demise. Aphrodite arched a brow at her. Did you forget that, Talia? The role you played in his banishment from your former sanctuary. It wasn't my idea. You tricked me. Talia hissed. Did I? Or was I genuinely warning you? That's your problem, Talia. The flaw you've gotten from Zeus. Aphrodite smirked at her scowling reflection, gently combing the hair away from the demigod's eyes. Instinctively, Talia lashed out to smack the goddess, hand away, but struck air. Rather than be upset, the Lady of Doves laughed softly at the foolish act. Not his rage. Deflection. Every overreaction you have is always someone else's fault. Not yours, never yours. No, Talia shook her head. No, you tricked me into doing it so that you'd be free to go after Whiskers because of Artemis. Do you really think I wouldn't be able to manipulate him at camp? Where my children also happen to reside? Aphrodite asked with a smirk while Talia fumed. She remembered the children of Aphrodite and their take on the hunters. She also remembered whispers they made in regards to Whiskers' appearance. Heck, even after he was banished, he would still pop up from time to time in their conversations. Beauregard had said something about him being an honorary member on the wall, when she'd asked about him after that fateful capture the flag game. Whiskers would sooner rip your cabin's members apart. Oh, if only. Aphrodite sighed, resting a hand on her cheek and leaning on the sink beside her. I know a few of my children that would love to have a man like that rip them apart. What is that supposed? Oh, come on. Seriously. The goddess giggled again while Talia groaned into her hands at the images that started popping into her head. There were far too many girls she knew and, though fewer, too many boys she recognized from camp. The daughter of Zeus let out a rough exhale and dragged her hands down her face. What do you want from me, huh? Why are you bothering me, Aphrodite? Because I'm letting you have a chance, Talia, and you're at risk of squandering it over such trivial things. Aphrodite huffed. Don't misunderstand, normally I'm all for that, but at this rate, you'll turn him off the idea of romance altogether. And if that happens, it'll be Hippolytus all over again, only this time, Artemis wins. Oh, the tragedy of it all. Talia grumbled. She made a note to look this hippo guy up. Maybe if she knew the reason Aphrodite was bothering her, she could work out a way around it. You really don't understand. Well, Talia, let me make this perfectly clear. A hand rested on her cheek and Talia felt her head turn to look the goddess in the eye. Talia inwardly panicked. She was not prepared for the goddess of love, or any Olympian really, to actually manifest in her apartment, but managed to keep a straight face. Aphrodite scowled at her and the hand on her face tightened to squeeze her chin. I may be the pretty in pink and airheaded goddess of love, but that doesn't mean I can't be a total bitch. The words were hissed like they had come from a snake. I've caused wars that were fought for years on end. I nearly split Olympus just by being born. If I lose this chance, this only opportunity, to give this poor boy the love he deserves for the suffering he's gone through. The goddess leaned in to whisper in her ear. I will destroy everything you hold dear. Gotta say, not really selling me on helping you after that threat. Talia grumbled. She winced when the grip tightened further. The goddess' nails, which were as sharp as knives, broke the skin on her face. Talia, dear, I don't make threats. Love is a promise. Aphrodite smirked. She released her face and gently moved Talia's bangs back so that they were out of her eyes again. A flash of pink and the superficial wounds that the goddess' nails had left were gone. If you don't feel anything for your Whiskers, then that's your loss. But if you do. I don't like Whiskers like that. Talia growled. Aphrodite tittered. Of course you don't. The goddess smiled. Talia hated that smile with a passion. She circled around the demigod and traced a finger up and over her shoulders. But if you did, well, all the more reason to snatch him up while the others are also feeling so generous towards you. What does that mean? What others? Talia frowned. I might as well tell you. Aphrodite looked at her nails and sighed. Thanks to your hunk's poor judgment, which is all Artemis' fault I'm sure, you're now aware I'm not the only deity who controls the domain of love. Not that that wasn't the case before. My son Eros, for example, has his own gripes with that boy's family. Ask Apollo about him if you ever get a chance. Not sure what Heather's plans are or if she has any. She's rarely around much anymore and whenever she is, she's always more interested in chatting with Dionysus. Heather. Talia grimaced with the word that left her mouth. That was a name she was extremely unfamiliar with. Eros, she knew of. That stupid shapeshifter that bothered her, Whiskers, Annie and Luke back in the day claimed to be one of his demi-children. If he was half as annoying as Aphrodite was, Talia never wanted to meet him. She's Egyptian, but don't worry about her. The one you should be worried about is Freya. She's a troublemaker. Ah, and I almost forgot about Frigg, Aphrodite chuckled. Oh, is she frothing at the mouth to get your hunk back in Boston? He must have made quite the impression on her during his stint as a lifeguard at her husband's hotel. Boston. Lifeguard. Hotel. Talia zeroed in on the words. Those were not dropped on accident. Whiskers was a lifeguard in a hotel in Boston. What was so bad about being a lifeguard in a hotel that he was told not to talk about it? Did they not have trunks his size or something? Given his fit shape, that probably wasn't the case. Maybe it was the type of bathing suit. A red Speedo or. And now I'm thinking about Whiskers in a red Speedo. Talia hung her head and groaned. That damn Iris message haunted her dreams, likely on account of her stupid hormones. Aphrodite's presence was probably influencing them or something. Oh, that's an image. Aphrodite tittered. Crap, she saw it. Please don't comment on it. The goddess glanced at the door, then back at Talia. I'd love to stay and talk about your detailed imagination, Hoover damn it. But our time's up. Might want to give off a courtesy flush so they don't think you were in here crying. Wah. A gentle knock sounded at the door and Talia turned to look at it. Talia. Leto's voice came through. She sounded a bit concerned. Is everything all right, honey? You've been in there for quite a while. Be out in a second, just brushing my teeth. Talia groaned at the words that left her lips. They were about to eat, why would she brush her teeth before a meal? That was an excuse Percy would use. She turned to scowl one last time at the goddess that had been threatening her, only to find herself looking at air. Don't worry, Talia, Aphrodite's voice rang in her head. If you need any help, just ask. I'll be watching. Oh, marvelous. Talia rolled her eyes. She glanced at her reflection in the mirror, her bangs were still pulled back. She drummed her fingers on the sink before she shook her head. Her bangs fell again and she smirked at her small retribution against Aphrodite before leaving the bathroom. Leto sighed as she went about gathering the dishes from the table. Dinner had been a tense affair. Mostly between the demigod and the mortal. Likely due to the spat that occurred between them earlier. Even without the hint of ichor flowing through his veins that Talia had in hers, Naruto was his mother's son. He was stubborn, proud, and as blunt as the very trees he preferred to surround himself with. His position wasn't wrong, but the points Talia had brought up were very valid. Leto knew more than others that secrets did no one any favors. Dessert? She asked the two. If I try to eat anything else, I think I'll explode. Talia groaned, her cheek resting on her arms on the table. Leto thought her table manners needed work, but then Artemis always needed an hour or two to bounce back to some semblance of civility whenever she bothered to stay for a meal. Not to mention that the poor demi-goddess didn't have a single mother figure in her life. I'll take some, her grandson said as he started getting the rest of the dishes. Leto appreciated his help gathering them. It was when he tried to help her at the sink, as he had been for the past few days, that she shooed him away. I'll handle these. Barely a glance at the dirtied silverware had them starting to wash themselves. She turned her grandson around and leaned over his shoulder to whisper. You owe her some explanations. Stop eavesdropping, he hissed back. Never. Leto muttered around a laugh, before giving him a gentle shove. Go on. I'll bring you some pumpkin pie in a bit. Pushy. He grumbled. Leto arched a brow and sent his ear a flick with a thought. The petulant scowl he gave her before he walked back to the girl made him look so much like Apollo whenever she'd chided him for some reason or another. We're sure he's not Apollo's. Leto wondered. That would be a rather hilarious reveal. The mortals, Jerry Springer young Cassandra so enjoyed growing up would be a perfect setting for such a thing. Alas, the goddess was sure she'd sense a flicker of divinity by now. That thought had her thinking of the demi-goddess her grandson was guiding to the sitting room around the corner. There wasn't a doubt in Leto's mind that Talia was Zeus' child. Penchant for lightning notwithstanding, her hair, eyes, and the shape of her nose were all the same features the king had. Then there was her attitude which was, assertive. Admittedly, the freckles were a cute addition for this generation. Must have come from the mother. However, along with Zeus, mark on his mortal child, there was the air of another around her. Leto felt it earlier, but didn't wish to draw attention to her presence here. Hera was lenient of her in many ways, but if she ever began to feel that Leto was favoring another bastard. Don't think about it. Leto shook her head. She was here for her grandson, to encourage his budding relationship, And it was mere coincidence that the girl that relationship was with was Zeus' daughter. Speaking of, she'd let them have their privacy for long enough. Quote. Hotel Valhalla. And you didn't think it might be a gateway to the Norse afterlife. I had just been arrested. Leto still needed to get the story about that from Apollo. How in the world did he lose his only nephew twice in one lifetime? So, wait, how long were you in prison for? I was only in holding. There's a difference. Seriously. How long did it take for them to arrest you? The day of. Naruto drawled. There was a pause and he sighed. Talia, there were gunshots. It's Jersey. Talia deadpanned. Leto snorted. If she thought the state was bad now, she should have been there after the Revolutionary War. Talk about a madhouse. Still, gunshots. In a Hilton. Of course the cops were called. He snorted. They saw a bunch of dead guys and one blood-covered teen. I'd arrest me, too. Well, actually, I'd probably start throwing sharp things at him. What? Did they find you in the middle of the brawl? You couldn't find a window to jump out of, Moon Knight. No, it was a 10-story fall. The silence that hung for a moment was interesting. Her grandson sighed again, and his next words really made her concerned for his mental state. Besides, I was beating a guy's face in with a brick when they got there. You were Artemis kid, right? Talia asked after a beat. Yes. Mom taught me self-defense. With a brick. With a knife. Naruto snorted. The brick was a mercy. Leto really needed to have a talk with Artemis about this. It was the Niobe incident all over again. Only now her baby girl was teaching her adorable grandson to be far too violent. This had to have been due to Zeus' leniency. She told him those wishes were a bad idea. And this Alf guy busted you out. He paid my bail and wiped my record. He's a Norse god. No, I will not tell you which. You said that I would tell you why I didn't go with you guys last summer. You're the one that asked about Hotel Valhalla. Naruto huffed. He scrutinized her. Unless you want to tell me who told you about the hotel in Boston. Quote. So, why didn't you go with us? Oh, well, that's troubling. Leto needed to pull this girl aside and give her some advice on romance. 1. Don't keep secrets. 2. Don't sleep with gods. They could be married. Aside from the fact that I really wanted to go to class. There was a soft thump and her grandson let out a grunt. Stop hitting me. Or else what, Whiskers? It's not like you ever hit back. Tree girl, I don't want to hit back. I shouldn't have to hit back. Why? Would you prefer having a brick in your hand? Honestly. Yeah. It might give me an edge. Talia let out a sound that was too low to be a giggle, yet too high to be a chuckle, it was somewhere in between. Leto stifled a laugh. These two were adorable. She wished she could watch them outright. Oh, that gave her an idea. Pressing herself as close to the wall as she could, the goddess of motherhood poked her head around the corner and dared a peek. The back of the couch was to her, and their faces weren't obscured by it. Talia was sitting on the right side, her legs tucked under her and turned to the left towards Naruto, who sat on the cushion beside her, leaning on it sideways with his arm atop the back. There was a comfortable gap between them, one that could be breached by either's arm's reach. Talia was grinning, bringing her inherent beauty to Leto's attention, and Naruto's eyes were sparkling with the same light-hearted joy that were there when he was but a bundle in his mother's arms. Ah, young love. Leto smiled and leaned against the wall watching them. The joy in her grandson's eyes suddenly dimmed and Leto's smile fell. The reason I didn't go with you guys was for the very reason I gave, he said, looking out the large windows overlooking the city. His gaze fell on the Empire State Building. If I went back to camp. That's it. Game over. A little selfish, but. I dunno, Talia. Maybe that's just human nature. So, then, do you regret helping me? Talia's smile had fallen into a frown. Naruto looked back at her and his eyes showed hardened conviction. No. He reached out and put a hand on her shoulder. Leto inwardly groaned at the move. That was the perfect opportunity to hold her hand, cup her face, or graze her arm, or do anything more intimate than pep talk grab her shoulder. Talia, you already gave so much for Olympus. It's not fair for them to ask for more. It wasn't your fault that your dad and your mom did what they did to make you. You mean they bumped uglies? Talia slowly smirked. Naruto groaned and moved the hand on her shoulder to cover his face. Don't. Oh, what was this? Leto arched a brow. They made the beast with two backs. Oh, could you not? What? I'm only talking about how'd you put it. Talia tilted her head before she started snickering. Oh, yeah. Perverts procreating purely for pleasure. We were kids. In a drugstore. Getting Annabeth medicine for her cold. Naruto scowled and, oh Ray's sweet baby boy, her grandson was blushing. So cute. He crossed his arms and turned away. That cashier crossed the line. He just wanted you to be safe. He slipped us condoms. I was 14, you were 12. And he slipped us condoms. Yeah, but I was tall for my age. And you were short. Naruto groaned into his hand. We should have called the cops on him, or busted his face open. Yeah, that would have been fun. Talia shoved him. Come on, it was only annoying for like an hour. They did come in handy for that water balloon fight. Oh, yeah, I almost forgot about that. Luke's scream echoed for miles. Naruto snorted. I almost felt bad. Annie was laughing so hard she was pink. That's only because she thought it was just a balloon. Those were the best water snakes ever. Quote. Think she ever figured out what they were? If not, I'm telling her the next time I see her. You're evil, but I respect that. Yeah, Talia's voice trailed off. Hey, Whiskers. About what I said in the hallway. Don't sweat it. You were mad. Naruto shrugged. You don't have the best track record whenever you're mad. Quote. What is that supposed to mean? Do you want a list? Because I could make a list ow. Thal tree girl. Hey. Naruto scooted back when Talia tried to punch him. He wound up toppled to his back on the far left cushion, using his arms to block her swings. This isn't fair, I don't have a brick. Life's not fair. Talia spat as she squirmed atop him, nearly straddling, and kept trying to punch him. She fully straddled him when she captured one hand under her knee and the other wrist with her left hand. Now hold still and take your lump like a man, smart ass. Leto couldn't resist laughing at that point. She knew her cover was blown, but this was too precious. Gran, stop laughing and get her off of me. What's wrong, Whiskers, can't handle getting your just desserts. Tree girl, you weigh a ton. Well, I did eat a lot of turkey. Talia, still holding Naruto's wrist in one hand and readying a fist to punch him with the other, turned to smile at her. By the way, thanks for dinner, Lady Leto. It was great. My pleasure dear. Leto giggled. Seriously, Talia. Get off. You're sitting on my stomach. Quote. What? You are sitting on my stomach. Talia's face immolated and Leto almost died of laughter when she scrambled to move. Her attempted dive off of the couch, the ensuing tumble between it and the coffee table, and Naruto's consequential grunt of being jumped off of sold their relationship for her. These two were just so perfect together. Leto sent a second aspect of herself off to cash in on a few favors so that she could see this through. Artemis would forgive her eventually. Apollo had been listening to some old Johnny Cash between meetings, so his twin's dramatic entrance was met by silence and the sight of him reclining in a hammock with headphones on. He realized real fast that she was there when his hammock was suddenly upturned and he flipped around in the air, nearly landing face first on the ground. He'd caught himself and shot to his feet, initially incensed, but cooled when he saw it was her. Lil, sis. What's up? Apollo. He saw her say. Then heard her when she ripped the headphones from his head. Those damn things off. Ow. What? Mother has taken Naruto from my lands. Okay. So, he's chilling with mom, is that bad? She's probably happy to have a grandkid to spoil this year. I mean, I'd go get some of her cooking, but I've got meetings in a few hours and her meals are dangerous. Apollo patted his perfectly toned stomach. Don't want to get out of shape. It will be hard for you to do that if you are stuffed and mounted in my temple. Artemis snapped before she started pacing. Whoa, that's hostile, sis. I am in no mood for your fatheadedness, Apollo. Okay. Serious time. I got it. But he's with mom. What could be so bad? Apollo asked, crossing his arms. He's not gonna get got by another pantheon while he's with her, and you've got the tracker on him. She's blocking it. Okay, so mom kidnapped him. Apollo arched a golden brow. How is this any different than when she took Hyman? Well, aside from what they did when she did. Apollo, my son is still chaste. Artemis seethed. The last time mother saw him, she tried to engage him with her mortal charge. Hold on. Back up. Rewind. Apollo rubbed his eyes with one hand. Lil nephew just turned 18, and he's a virgin. Obviously. What? His misadventure in Seattle aside, you've summed it up perfectly. Naruto is still chaste. Artemis nodded happily before scowling. If it were up to mother, he'd be in Aphrodite's clutches at this point. No better than you or the rest of Olympus. I'm standing right here, this is my temple. Apollo scowled at her disrespect. An amber brow arched. Your point. You are all kinds of hurtful. Apollo huffed. He crossed his arms again. I should throw you out and call mom. See what plots she's weaving to undermine you. Maybe I should help out of spite. Don't think I won't let Diana out again. You. Apollo swallowed the first 7,500 words that came to mind. Very mean person that I am related to. Witty. You wouldn't know wit if it slapped you in the face like a fish. Apollo mocked. Victory was his. Why on earth would any? No, curse you, Apollo. Artemis groaned, pinching the bridge of her nose. She huffed out a sigh before scowling at him. I came to you for help. Mother has kidnapped my son and I can't find her. You can't find mom. Apollo smirked. She is vastly superior at hiding than I am. She hid from Hera for months, before we were born. Remember? Right. Apollo always forgot that part of their history. Why did he ever bother listening to Hera again? Oh yeah, the threat of forced mortal labor. Just the thought of those years made him have flashbacks. He rubbed his face. Okay, well, have you tried calling Naruto yet? Iris messaging is a useless method of conversation with. I said, call. Apollo sighed. Sis, do you even still have the phone I got you? It's in my temple. Somewhere. Why am I not surprised? Lives like a cavewoman, acts like a cavewoman. Apollo sighed and looked at his temple ceiling. He twisted his wrist and pulled his phone out from its private subspace. He primed his nephew's number and waggled it at her. You may make one call. Then go find your phone. Lil nephew's got your number registered, so he might call you, you know, maybe more often than we call mom. Quote. Such a waste of time, why bother speaking if not in front of the other partaker? Artemis grumbled, snatching the phone from his hand. She frowned at the keys. It's the green button. Apollo drawled with a twist of his hand. I knew that. Uh-huh. He pretended to investigate his impeccable nails while she glared at him. She held the phone to her ear as it rang and he oh so casually eavesdropped. Quote. Naruto. Where are you? I can barely hear you. You're where? Balls deep in a brothel's best whore. Apollo asked, only half joking. The glare he got for his mild exaggeration was hilariously furious. She really needed to get over the fact that mortal women knew how to make men bow to their whims and make profit off of it. I can't. I'm handing you to your uncle. Artemis offered him the phone, but held it for a second longer before he could take it. Find my son. Yeah. Apollo rolled his eyes and put the phone to his ear. Static. So much static. It was actually cringe-inducing. Lil nephew. Can you hear me? Ju. In. Eula fr. Waron now. Well, somehow, I've got terrible reception. I'm on Hephaestus, wireless provider, so that shouldn't even be a thing. Are you at an underground rave? Without me? What the hell, kid? The thought was deeply hurtful. Why was his family so cruel today, of all days? He resolved to call mom later for a pep talk. And better details. No. I'm Ju at Ali Parent. Quote. Ali's apartment. Who's Ali? She cute. Or he? Apollo quickly tacked on. It'd be awfully hypocritical, especially for him, to judge his nephew for being a member of the LGBTQ+ community. Remember, Lil nephew, Uncle Fred loves you regardless of sexual orientation and, unlike your mother, he doesn't judge. Quote. Oh okay. I'm Ju gon ret you I didn't say hat. Brat. What is he saying? Artemis hissed at him, but he shooed her off. This was male talk time, Artemis was not invited. Look, kiddo, what state are you in? Nevada. Apollo paused. That voice was not the voice of his beloved Lil nephew. It was octaves too deep. He furrowed his brow. He knew that voice. Why did he know that voice? What city? Nay Carson City. Quote. Hephaestus. Apollo hissed and ground his teeth. Crap. Mom really had kidnapped Naruto. Don't worry Lil nephew, I'll get tech support and find you. Remember to keep it safe and don't drink from the punch bowl. He paused, and amended. Or do, we don't know how that'll affect you. It'll be a learning experiment. Ace could use the notes. I'm rambling. Bye, kiddo. Apollo grinned before flipping the phone shut. He put it in the hand around it to his head and took a deep breath. Damn it. Well, where is he? Artemis asked from where she stood with her arms crossed. He pointed a finger at her. First, you have to promise not to blame me. Apollo. Artemis, this time, legit. He pointed at himself. Not my fault. So promise. Fine, yes. Fine. Artemis sighed. I promise not to blame you. Thank you. Apollo huffed. He tossed his phone aside and crossed his arms. If you must know, Mom bribed Hephaestus to intercept and I assume your, calls. Very well. Artemis turned to leave and Apollo snapped his fingers. His temples lockdown initiated and she rounded on him. Apollo, let me out of here. Yeah, definitely not happening until I know what you're planning. I am going to break his other leg. Artemis, no. Artemis, yes. Artemis snarled. He's had this coming for far too long. Mom bribed him. He's probably enjoying some pecan pie or something. Apollo threw his hands up when she glared harder at him. What do you want from me, sis? I can't precog lil nephew because of all the stuff that's happened to him, we can't call him or mom, and she's blocked your magic. How'd she even do that? She'd need access to the spell in order to. Apollo paused and looked at Artemis. She refused to meet his gaze. He turned to face her fully, gaping as he did. Artemis, you didn't. Quote. I had to get back to the hunt. He was going to be watched. She swore. Artemis, you caused this. Apollo groaned into his hands. His phone lines were probably jammed and would be for who knows how long. Oh my me. You basically gave Mom the okay to take Naruto and do whatever she wants with him. She could seduce him for all you know. Apollo, don't be crass. It's Hymen all over again, Artemis. Apollo often forgot about his unfortunately named son for good reason. He scrubbed his face with his hands. Tartarus swallow me now. Why did Mom have to mess with my phone? I'm innocent in this. Your failure to watch him led to this. I'm not the one who just gave her son to our hot, single mom. And yes, I know how weird that sounds. Artemis cursed and crossed her arms. What do you propose we do about it? Wait until he shows up again. Apollo threw his arms up again at her affronted squawk. Sis, we can't divert our time to this right now. We are literally on the precipice of another revolt, only this time, all of us are going to be in the net, not just Pops. I know Why can't he ever just stay put? Artemis grumbled as she rubbed her eyes. Is it so much to ask for? Preaching to the choir, sis. Apollo grumbled. He sighed. Well, plus sighed, at least we know he won't be at risk of dying. But if he does, what a way to go, am I right? I will mount your head on my chariot and use it in the place of a lantern. To be continued.